Chapter 11. Preparation. Gremory Estate. Training continued for the next few days, with Ichigo overseeing and instructing the Gremory peerage on what to do. He'd been making each member focus on one main thing primarily, but did shift them around on what they were doing from time to time. He himself would train in private, attempting to become more familiar with his sacred gear. However, one thing was painfully obvious to him. Issei really needed a lot of work. The resident pervert had potential, Ichigo knew that much, but his current state was kind of pitiful. It was as though he was unsure of himself, holding himself back with doubts that he had. He couldn't allow things to carry on like that. Otherwise, Issei would probably be taken out immediately after the rating game began. Looks like I need to have a little chat with him, Ichigo muttered to himself before he began making his way towards the possessor of the boosted gear. Issei was currently holding his knees and panting, having just finished a half-an-hour spar with one of the robot training dummies. Due to this, he didn't notice Ichigo approaching him. "Hey, you doing okay?" Ichigo asked him. Fine, Issei breathed as he stood up properly. He then looked to the substitute Soul Reaper as though he wanted to ask him something, but was unsure of whether he should or shouldn't. "Dude, just spit it out already," Ichigo assured him. "I don't bite." "How did you do it?" Issei inquired. "How did you get so strong?" The orange-haired teen looked at the brown-haired teen for a moment as he thought. "Mind telling me exactly why you're asking me this?" Ichigo asked casually. Issei released a breath before he began. "I've realized that I'm actually the weakest one here. I thought that I could just do whatever I wanted and beat up anyone in my way, just because I have the boosted gear. But, back in the clubroom, when you stopped me from charging that butt's pawn, I realized that I was nowhere near that." He moved his gaze from his hands and looked to Ichigo. "I want to help Bucho, I really do, but what can I do? I'm useless." Ichigo nodded in understanding of the situation. "I wasn't always strong, you know," he told Issei, causing the latter's eyes to go wide. "But then, how?" Issei stammered. "It was my friends, or rather, my intense longing to protect them," Ichigo clarified. "I constantly pushed myself so that I could protect them no matter what." "Your heart's in the right place, Issei, I can see that clearly. However, your fear is holding you back." "Ho," was Issei's intelligent reply. "You want to protect the others, but you're afraid you'll fail. When you fight someone and try avoiding their attacks, you're afraid they'll hit you. When you're trying to hit someone, you're afraid you'll miss. You can't afford to think like that. You need to cast your doubts aside, believe in yourself and steel your resolve. When you're protecting someone, you have to believe that you will protect them. When you're dodging an enemy's attack, you need to believe that you will dodge it. When you're attacking, you need to believe that you will hit them. Understand?" Issei looked at Ichigo in shock, before he regained his composure. "Yeah, I think I do," he said as he nodded his head. "That's good," encouraged Ichigo. "You're one of the guys of your group. A guy's duty is to always protect what's dear to him. Become strong, help Ria's escape marriage to that grilled turkey and protect all of them." "Yeah, I think I'll do just that," Issei agreed, a newfound resolve in his eyes. "Great, now get to work on becoming stronger. After about an hour, go train your magic with Akino and Aisha," the spiky-haired substitute Soul Reaper instructed. Ichigo turned around and walked away from Issei, who was preparing to have another session with the training dummy. The substitute Soul Reaper went back behind the house, into the forest and began his own training with his sacred gear. Forest. Ichigo was sitting on the ground, catching his breath. He'd been training with his sacred gear for around 40 minutes before training his regular powers for roughly 20 minutes. Overall, he was quite pleased with his progress. He'd become familiar in the usage of his sacred gear, enough to have gained the ability to prevent it tripling his strength unless he wanted to. It would be a useful tactic in turning a battle around and catching the enemy off guard. "Not bad, King, not bad at all," complimented his inner hollow. "Thanks," replied Ichigo. By the way, King, me and old man Zangetsu here found a little technical issue we think you should know about, informed his hollow. Really, what is it? Inquired Ichigo. It is regarding your fully hollowified form and your sacred gear, answered Zangetsu. Yeah, it looks like your hollow form and your sacred gear aren't compatible, elaborated his pale copy. Meaning, you can't use your sacred gear when you go full hollow. But don't worry too much, Kingy, your first fully hollowified form is almost unstoppable anyway. Ichigo frowned for a moment. But I can still use the shock burner if I'm only wearing my mask, right? He asked. Yes, there is no problem with that, answered Zangetsu. Good to know, murmured Ichigo. He then got back on his feet. I guess I should start making some food, it's almost lunchtime. Since the first day, he had been the main one cooking the food because the peerage of devils had practically begged him to. Although, there were times when Akino, Rias, and Aisha would insist he let them cook, saying that they couldn't just make him do it all the time. Without any further delay, he began making his way to the kitchen. Issei's room. All right, said Issei in triumph. After Ichigo's little talk, he'd been burning through the full day. Frankly, all the others were pretty shocked at how strong he'd started training after that. He was also feeling quite pleased with his results. Everyone in Ria's peerage could tell that all of them had gotten stronger over the past few days. Even sweet little Aisha. She could now make an emerald green bubble around herself that could block attacks and another one that could deflect them back in the direction of the attacker. His own magic reserves had improved too. In the beginning, it was just about a grain of rice. Today, it had reached slightly bigger than a marble. His greatest progress had been in his physical attributes. His strength, speed, and stamina had improved considerably from what they initially were. He was planning to work on his own special move from tomorrow night, one that he believed would tip the scales colossally in their upcoming battle, whilst simultaneously satisfying his energy. Issei lay down on his bed and closed his eyes as he began to fall asleep. Issei's mind. Issei was in a dark place. Literally. He couldn't see anything. What the? Where am I? He questioned out loud, despite no one else being there with him. Suddenly, he heard a sound. What was that? He said in confusion as he turned around. A few moments of silence passed. Then, he heard something again. It was faint, like a whisper, as well as extremely difficult to make out. P-N-C-A-Y-R-E-N-U-E. Hello? Issei called out. Who's there? Are you trying to call me? He received no response. Your ot adi un ell me. Next, the dark place vanished as his mind returned to dreaming. A few days later. It was currently morning and Ichigo was sitting alone at the table, having a simple breakfast consisting of some toast and tea. They had been training intensely for the past 7 days now. Everyone had made great leaps in their progress, even Issei. He'd also told Ichigo that he'd heard some sort of voice in his sleep a few days previously, as well as that he was working on some sort of secret sure-kill technique for the upcoming match. As for the others, Rias had managed to stabilize her power of destruction, consequently improving its power and efficiency. Akino was now able to recharge her magic reserves more quickly and was also more efficient in expending it when she was using magic. Koneko's speed had increased a good deal. She wasn't on Kiba's level, but would at least be able to read the movements of opponents going at a speed similar to his. Kiba had increased his defense a good deal, he could now withstand a few good hits from a Rook-class enemy and keep fighting fairly effectively. Asia's barriers had gotten stronger, to the point that Koneko had to give it 3 powerful punches to break it. Ichigo heard footsteps entering the room. Turning his head, he saw it was Issei who had entered. Except that he had an excited expression on his face, as though he'd won the jackpot in a lottery or something. It happened. It finally happened, he said excitedly. Whoa, calm down, said Ichigo with his hands raised to emphasize his point. Just what exactly happened? The voice became clear last night. I heard it properly. Turns out that it was the dragon in my sacred gear trying to get through to me, Issei explained. Did you actually meet it? Inquired Ichigo with a slight inquisitive frown. Yeah. He's the Welsh dragon, Drake. I actually had a proper conversation with him. What did you talk about? Oh, nothing really. He was just telling me how he'd been trying to get through to me for a long time and that I was finally strong enough to hear him. I can talk to him whenever I want through the sacred gear. Ichigo's mouth formed into a small smile. He clamped his right hand onto Issei's shoulder. Way to go, Issei. I told you that you had potential, he said in congratulations. Nah, it was all thanks to you to be honest, otherwise I doubt I'd be strong enough, replied Issei with a large, friendly grin. His eyes then widened as though he'd just remembered something. Oh, yeah. I forgot, Drake said he wanted to talk to you. Me? Asked Ichigo in confusion. How? Issei then summoned the boosted gear onto his left hand. For a second, nothing happened, then the jewel began to light up and a voice spoke out. So you are the one who made my partner strong enough to hear my voice, said Drake. You have my sincere thanks, Ichigo Kurosaki. Oh, you're welcome, I guess. Ichigo responded. He then noticed something. Wait a minute, how do you know my name? Oh, that would be me, said Issei happily. I kind of told him who you were from what I know about you. So, what did you want to speak to me about? Asked Ichigo. Nothing in particular to be honest, I merely wished to thank you. It was getting annoying having to wait for my partner to be able to hear me. Oh, I see, said Ichigo. Well, I'll leave you to the training, said Drake before the boosted gear went silent. Ichigo remained silent as he pondered over something. Finally, he looked to Issei. I think I know what I'm going to do with you for today, he told him. What's that? Asked Issei. You'll see, but first, we need to get the others. Outside the Gremory estate. Ichigo and the others were standing in a line, except for Issei and Kiba, who were standing in front of them. All right, announced Ichigo. Issei, I want you and Kiba to spar with each other. Issei, use your sacred gear. Kiba, take this. If it breaks, you can use your sword BRTH, but make sure you create your sword with a dull edge. Ichigo tossed the blonde boy a wooden bokken, which he caught. What sword BRTH? Asked Issei with his right hand slightly raised. You don't really need to know yet, Ichigo told him. All right, both of you get ready. The two combatants took their places opposite each other. Issei summoned the familiar red gauntlet onto his hand. Kiba took a stance with his bokken at the ready. Begin! Ichigo called. Immediately, Kiba rushed towards his fellow Gremory, taking advantage over his superior speed. Issei just about blocked the wooden sword in time by using the boosted gear. What the hell? At least give me a warning, you DMN pretty boy. Issei screamed. Sorry Issei, but in battle, your enemy won't really give you any warnings, Kiba replied with a smile before pulling away. DMNU. Fine. Issei responded, just as his first boost occurred. The pattern continued for some time, with Kiba attacking and Issei blocking or dodging them. However, that in itself was impressive, considering what his starting point had been. Issei attempted to land a few strikes of his own, but the knight avoided them. One thing they all noticed though, was that the Issei was responding better and becoming more effective as he gained more boosts. All right, here goes, exclaimed Issei as his 10th boost occurred. Explosion! The jewel of the boosted gear lit up as Drake's voice mimicked Issei's cry. Suddenly, a green aura and sphere briefly appeared around the brown-haired teen's form. Without warning, Issei began to rush Kiba with a flurry of strikes. Kiba blocked them all, however more and more cracks were appearing on the bokken with each hit. Finally, it shattered into splinters. The blonde teen immediately leaped back as he drew out his holy eraser, making sure that the edge was dulled as he'd been told. He rushed back towards Issei, slashing horizontally at his midsection, but the resident pervert deflected his strike by punching the sword with his armored left fist. He then struck out with his right, aiming for Kiba's gut. He almost made contact when his opponent stepped to the side and retreated by jumping back. "Issei!" Ichigo called out. "Use a magical attack." "All right." Issei agreed. Issei moved his left arm forth and gathered his magic power in front of his open left palm. It stopped at the size of a ping-pong ball. "DMN, looks like I'm still lacking in the magic department," he commented to himself. "Oh well, guess this'll just have to do." He reared his fist back and punched the red sphere. "Dragon shot," he shouted. What no one expected was for it to turn into a huge laser-like attack, which Kiba frantically threw himself to the side to avoid. It carried on past the knight and hit a neighboring mountain. As soon as contact was made, the tower of rock exploded. "Reset!" cried the boosted gear. Issei fell onto his backside from a mixture of shock and slight exhaustion. "Whoa," he muttered in amazement. Ichigo gave a whistle. "DMN, I honestly wasn't expecting that," the orange-haired Soul Reaper commented. "Congratulations, man." "Yes, well done, Issei," agreed Rias. "That attack was on the same level as a high-class devil." Seriously?" Issei asked in shock. "Ara, our little Issei's grown so much," giggled Akino. "Issei-san, congratulations!" Aisha exclaimed happily. "Well done, Issei-kun," complimented Kiba. "You've improved," Koneko monotoned. "Ah, hair. Thanks guys," Issei smiled with a slight blush and a goofy grin as he got back to his feet. He then dismissed his sacred gear. Ichigo turned to Kiba. "What was your opinion of the battle?" he asked the knight. "To be honest, I tried to end the match with the first few strikes, but he kept avoiding or blocking them," replied Kiba. "Even when he blocked them, he didn't budge, despite me putting so much force into them that it actually caused strain on the bokken and made slight cracks. Then, he actually broke it through raw force." "See? You've become a lot stronger, Issei," Ichigo told him. "In fact, that bokken was actually reinforced and made to withstand strikes, yet you managed to break it." "Yeah, I guess I have," agreed Issei. "Although, it's really all thanks to you, senpai-sensei." "Relax, there's no need to be so formal with me, remember?" Ichigo replied with a smile. Suddenly, a white magic circle with the Gremory insignia appeared on the floor, about 2 meters away from them, making every head turn towards it. Then, a figure appeared before them. A woman in a maid uniform. Also known as Grafia. "Grafia!" Ria said in surprise. "What are you doing here?" "Greetings, Miss Rias, and everyone else," said Grafia. "I've come here regarding Ichigo Kurosaki-san's request. By the way, just Ichigo is fine." "I'm not one for the formalities," Ichigo told her. "Very well. As I was saying, I have looked into what you requested. Did you find anything?" "Yes," replied Grafia in the affirmative. All of the Gremory peerage gave a sigh of relief. With the substitute Soul Reaper on their side, they felt like they were almost bound to win. "What was it that you found exactly?" Ichigo inquired. "In a rating game, each team is allowed to take 2 treasures with them," began the maid. "However, if a peerage doesn't have a complete set of members, like Miss Rias, then they are allowed to take 1 additional person onto their team, at the cost of not being able to take any treasures. Furthermore, the additional person does not necessarily have to be a devil. It can be anyone." "That's fine. Thanks again, Grafia-san," Ichigo said appreciatively. "You are welcome," replied Grafia. It was not an issue. The silver-haired Ultimate Queen then went back to wherever she had come from, via Magic Circle. Ichigo turned to face the devils. "All right guys, looks like I'll be joining you in your match against the turkey," he stated. "But that doesn't mean we stop training," he clarified. "We all need as strong as possible." "Heh, I don't have a problem with that. After all, I aim to become the ultimate pawn." Issei declared. I don't think any of us have an issue with getting stronger, Ichigo-kun, said Akino. The rest of the peerage nodded in agreement. All right then, let's get to it. Ichigo ordered. Yes, sensei, was the unanimous response, which Ichigo decided to not bother refuting. Gremory Estate, sunset. Everyone was resting as they finished training for the day. Ichigo was sitting down with his back against a tree behind the building. Hearing footsteps, he turned his head to see Koneko walking towards him. Can I sit with you, Ichigo-senpai? The white-haired rook asked when she was standing next to him. Sure, I don't mind at all, Ichigo consented. Thank you, she muttered before taking a seat on his right. A few seconds of silence passed. Koneko turned her head to face the orange-haired teen. Ichigo-senpai, can I ask you something? Ichigo thought for a second. He closed his eyes as he relaxed his body. Yeah, go ahead, he told her. I've noticed that you seem more open and relaxed with me and Aisha-senpai. Why's that? Ichigo's eyes opened in slight surprise. His face formed a light frown as he pondered over it. His face relaxed as he found his answer. I guess, he began, it's because the two of you remind me of my own little sisters. Your sisters? Koneko asked with a confused expression. What do you mean? Well, I've got two sisters. They're both younger than me and are twins. One of them has light, sandy hair and an innocent, loving personality. She's the one that Aisha reminds me of, he explained. The other one, she's a little more straightforward and isn't afraid to give someone a beat down if they need it. A bit like you. He began ruffling Koneko's hair in a brotherly way. Koneko's mouth formed a small smile and she began to make a faint noise that sounded like purring. She realized what she was doing after a few seconds and her face lit up bright red in embarrassment before she quickly moved her head away. Her reaction made Ichigo smile. "Oh, what a cute reaction," he commented. She kept her gaze averted, not looking at him directly. "Don't worry, I won't do it if you don't like it," Ichigo reassured her. Koneko's face returned to its normal color. She turned her face to him. "Did anything happen to your sisters?" she asked. She immediately wished she hadn't, since Ichigo's expression became one with a slightly sad look to it. "No, nothing happened to them," he said. "But unfortunately, I can never see them again." I'm sorry," Koneko whispered sadly. "I didn't mean to dash." "Don't worry about it," Ichigo cut her off, shaking his head slightly with a small smile and his eyes closed. "You didn't know about it." The teenage Soul Reaper then stood up. "Come on, we should head inside with the others," he stated before he began walking away. Koneko remained as she was. Painful memories of her losing her own sister and the events that followed played through her head. In that moment, she knew that someone who was the closest thing to a kindred spirit had come to her. Someone who shared a similar pain. She recalled what Ichigo had told her about why he was more relaxed around her and Aisha. "Ichigo, Ani-san," she whispered, as though she was testing it. It sounded all right, but she didn't think it'd be right to use it just yet. Releasing a sigh, the petite girl stood up and began making her way to the entrance. "Oh, make." Ichigo was taking a stroll in the park. It was a peaceful and quiet evening with a clear sky. The appealing full moon was visible. He took a deep breath, relaxing himself. Without warning, a magic circle appeared beneath him. "Seriously," he exclaimed as he was transported away. When Ichigo could see again, he found himself in a forest. Not just any forest. The familiar forest. "What the hell?" he murmured. "Why have I been brought here?" Suddenly, he heard the fast-approaching footfalls of someone who was running. Turning around, he saw Kuro running directly at him. He looked frantic, as though he was running for his life, with the small fragment in his arms, its round yellow eyes looking up at him. "Ichigo! Help me," he screamed as he approached. "What's going on?" Ichigo shouted back to him. Kuro reached Ichigo, but he didn't stop. Instead, what he did was shift the small fragment, so that he was holding it with his left hand only, leaving his right hand free to grab Ichigo's arm as he neared him, pulling the substitute along with him. "Kuro? The hell?" Ichigo exclaimed as he released himself from the humanoid fragment's hold and ran alongside him. "What's wrong?" "I brought here using the magic circle. You have to help me. She's trying to eat me." Kuro screamed in response. "Who?" "Her," said Kuro whilst pointing backwards with his thumb. Ichigo looked back and saw a snow-white wolf chasing after them, its gaze fixed on the team garbed in black. It was frighteningly close. "What the hell did you do to get a wolf chasing you?" he asked Kuro. "I don't know," Kuro frantically replied. "The thing's been stalking me for days. I used to throw some food to it when I was eating, but when I tried to actually approach it today, it tried to pounce on me." Ichigo gave a depressed sigh as he ran. He was seriously doubting if having a normal life had really been all that bad. After all, he didn't have to deal with crazy things like this. Kuro ended up tripping on an exposed, oversized tree root. The little fragment and his hat fell out of his hands as he fell to the floor. Ichigo stopped in his tracks and turned around. Kuro turned over when he saw a shadow cover him, attempting to roll out of the way. However, fate had other plans for him, as the wolf landed on top of him, pinning him down with his back to the ground. The little fragment retreated into its shadow out of fear. The orange-haired teen was about to move when the wolf began to unexpectedly glow a bright white. There was a brief flash of light, temporarily blinding all of them. When the light died down, the wolf was no longer on Kuro. Rather, what Ichigo saw on top of the fragment was a girl. She looked the same age as Kuro, had waist-length silver hair, a fair skin tone, bright blue eyes, and a pair of snow-white wolf ears on her head, as well as a matching wolf's tail. She was wearing a white kimono that reached just above her knees. She had a look of pure excitement and happiness as she looked down at Kuro. "I finally caught you," she exclaimed joyfully before hugging him without any further ado. "Kuro, please explain the meaning of this," Ichigo demanded with a tick on his forehead, annoyed that Kuro had dragged him here simply for this. Hey, easy. I'm just as dumbfounded as you are," Kuro said in defense. The little fragment came out of its shadow and simply stared at the scene. The wolf girl was still hugging Kuro and it didn't look like she intended to let go anytime soon. "Please let me stay with you," she asked excitedly without relenting her embrace. "Wait, what?" Kuro asked in shock. "Please let me stay with you and please look after me," she said. "I want to stay with you forever." "What?" exclaimed Kuro. "Forever and ever and ever," she said whilst she continued hugging him. Ichigo facepalmed from where he was watching on the side. "Good grief," he complained. Chapter 12. Rating Game. Ichigo's house, Ichigo's room. Ichigo stood by his window, looking out at the neighborhood. Night had fallen over Kuo, casting a cloak of darkness over the town. The spiky, orange-haired teen was clad in his black Soul Reaper attire. His sacred gear was already equipped. "Guess it's time to go," he muttered to no one in particular. He slowly began making his way towards the door, intending to take leave from his house. Once he was outside, he calmly took to the skies as he started his journey to Kuo Academy. Issei's house, Issei's room. Issei was sat down on his bed in anticipation. He'd just finished talking with Drake. Today was the day of the rating game. The battle against Riser and his peerage. They'd all been training intensely during their last few days, except for the final day of the training PRD, because Ichigo had instructed them all to just use that day to rest up and recover. Otherwise, they'd lose the match due to fatigue. They couldn't afford to lose. Not when Ria's freedom was on the line like this. Not when there was the danger of her being forcibly married to that stuck-up playboy, Riser. He remembered the talk that he'd had with Ria's in private, during one of the nights whilst they were training. When she'd mentioned her dream to him. He wouldn't allow that to be taken away from her. She deserved much better than that. Ichigo had assisted him in developing a new technique. The mechanics were similar to his dragon shot, following the same core principles. He'd materialize his magic power, or a portion of it. However, instead of punching the sphere forward, he'd enclose his hand around it into a fist. The result was that he could then deliver an extremely powerful punch, which he dubbed the Dragon Smash. Also, there was his special move that Aisha had helped him to perfect, although he hadn't revealed it to anyone. This was for various reasons, one being that Ichigo, using his impossible strength, would reduce him to a bloody pulp. Suddenly, he heard the sound of his bedroom door opening. Turning his head in the corresponding direction, Issei was greeted with the sight of innocent little Aisha. The blonde bishop was wearing her nun clothes, although the cross was omitted. "Issei-san, can I come in?" she nervously asked. "Oh, yeah, sure you can," he replied, causing Aisha to enter happily. His fellow peerage member sat down next to him. "Are those your clothes from when you were a nun?" he inquired. "Yes," she responded. "Bucho-san told me to wear whatever I felt the most comfortable in, so I decided to wear my clothes from when I was a nun." Issei noticed that she seemed a bit fidgety. He was about to ask her what was wrong when she spoke again. "Issei-san, can I please lean on your shoulder?" she requested. "Yeah, go ahead," he consented with a small, yet warm smile. Aisha placed her head onto her savior's shoulder, instantly becoming calm. "When I think about how we have to fight a strong battle today against someone so strong, I feel afraid," she stated. "I know that Ichigo-san was kind enough to train us and that I can look after myself now, but I still feel scared. But when I'm with you, I feel calm. I feel as though everything's going to be okay." Issei was practically speechless. He didn't know that Aisha thought so highly of him. That she felt safe around him, just because he was there. "Issei-san, can you promise me something?" she inquired. Yeah, okay." "What is it?" he asked her whilst giving her his permission. "Can you please stay with me forever?" she asked him hopefully. "To stay with me and always look after me?" After overcoming his initial shock, Issei smiled and patted her head. "Of course," he answered. "I'll always look after you, Aisha." Just then, a red magic circle appeared in the middle of his bedroom, bearing the Gremory insignia. "Looks like it's time to go," remarked Issei as he gently moved Aisha's head off his shoulder and stood up. "Come on Aisha, Bucho's waiting for us." ORC Club Room. Everyone was present in the club room. Except for Ichigo, who was calmly sitting on one of the sofas, all of them were garbed in their school uniform. Besides, his shihakusha was black, so it matched their uniform and they'd be able to easily recognize him. They all noticed that he had black, skeletal gauntlets on his hands, but no one questioned him about it. He was currently sipping tea from a cup in his right hand. Akino was standing with her usual smile. Unlike the majority of the group, she was wearing a red and white Shrine Maiden outfit. She was also holding a circular tray with both of her hands, which practically told everyone that she was the one who'd given Ichigo the tea. Kiba was putting on simple metal gauntlets and greaves. They'd increase his defense without really slowing him down due to their lightweight. Even now, he retained his cheerful, prince-like demeanor, however you could tell that there was tension on his mind. Koneko was sitting on the sofa reading a small handbook on martial arts. The short rook was wearing fingerless MMA gloves that had a metal strip on the back of each hand and a pink, cat's paw print in the center of each strip. "Thank you for coming everyone," said Riaz appreciatively. "And thank you, Ichigo, for training us when you didn't have to." "Don't mention it, it's nothing," insisted Ichigo. "Besides, I hated that guy's attitude and I told you, I don't agree with forced marriages." The door to the clubroom opened as Sona and her queen, Tsubaki, walked into the room. Their facial expressions were as blank and stern-looking as ever, however there was a hint of anxiety in their eyes. "Hello Riaz," greeted Sona. "I came here to wish you luck against Riza." Riaz smiled at her childhood friend. "Thank you for your support, Sona. By the way," continued Sona, "me and Tsubaki are going to be watching your match." Before any further exchanges could be made, the magic circle in the center of the room lit up and activated. Soon after, Grayfia appeared via her own magic circle. Everyone, it's time for the rating game to begin, she informed them. Also, in addition to the elder members of each household, Mstr Surzex will be watching this match. I see, muttered Rias. So Big Brother's going to be watching this battle too. Ichigo stood up from his seat and briefly loosened his shoulders. Well, looks like the preparations are complete, the substitute Soul Reaper observed. Everyone else finished what they were doing before they all stepped into the glowing circle on the floor. Then, a bright light shone up around them, temporarily obscuring their vision. When the flash had died down, they saw what looked like an exact replica of the room. DMN, thought Ichigo. Gotta say, this is pretty neat. Looks like they got everything down to the fine details. Exclaimed Issei. What? Why didn't it work? We're in the exact same place. Ichigo looked at the brown-haired teen with a deadpan stare. Seriously, just how thick are you, Hayadu? He asked flatly. Eh? What do you mean? Was Issei's reply, a confused expression on his face. Issei, this is just a replica of the school created for the purpose of holding the rating game, explained Rias. You can go all out in here without worrying about any damage that you'll cause, because it's in a separate dimension. Issei's face was the very image of shocked thoughtless. He shouted in surprise once his mind had processed what the Princess of Ruin had told him. They can actually do that. There was a brief ring of static as the replica school's intercom system was turned on. Good evening, announced a female voice that they all recognized as Grayfia's. My name is Grayfia, a maid of the Gremory household. I shall be the arbiter for this match between Miss Rias and Riza Phoenix. Both teams have been placed in their base, Miss Rias being the occult research clubroom in the old building and Riza Phoenix as being the student council office in the new building. In order for any pawns to promote, they must reach the enemy base. The match will continue till sunrise in the human world. Both minutes have 15 minutes to plan. The intercom was then turned off. Everyone, please take one of these, requested Rias, holding small, translucent, pink spheres in her hand. These are magic transceivers and will allow us to stay in contact. The others gathered around and took one each, placing them into their ears. Once everyone had finished doing that, Rias took out a map of the school. It was gridded, possessing numbered squares, like a chessboard. She began talking again. Okay, we need to plan how we're going to attack. First, I want Koneko and Yuto to use their familiars and lay traps in the forest, she explained. The two said peerage members nodded in understanding, summoning their respective familiars after a second. Akino, I want you to set a fog over the forest, obviously one that won't affect our team. Understood, confirmed Akino. They're most likely going to try taking the gym building, since it provides a clear path from the new school building to the old school building. It'll troublesome if all of Riza's pawns came here and promoted to queen pieces, so we'll have to focus on taking it out. Yuto, I want you to take this map and mark the places where you and Koneko lay any traps, she instructed, rolling up the map and handing it to Kiba. The blonde knight picked up what looked like a small toolbox before him. Koneko and Akino made their way out of the clubroom. It was then that Issei decided to speak up and ask about what was on his mind. Bucho, he began, what are we supposed to do? Rias gave him a soft smile. Come here, Issei, she instructed him as she made her way over to one of the sofas. The pawn did as he was told to, moving towards her whilst she sat down on the sofa. Now, put your head here, she told him whilst patting her lap. Needless to say, all three of the others were shocked. Although, in different ways. Issei had a dumb, excited grin plastered all over his face. Ichigo's eyes had widened considerably. As for Aisha, she had blatant jealousy written all over her face. Oh. Could it really be, he thought Issei ecstatically. Am I about to receive a legendary lap pillow from Bucho? He quickly regained his outward composure before replying to Rias. Why yes, of course. When the brown-haired boy had placed his head where ordered to, Rias began to gently slide his hair. Soon, Issei began to get an unexpected, but not unwelcome feeling of strength building up inside him. He wondered if it was something to do with his MSTR's actions. Bucho, he inquired. I just undid some of the seal on your power, Rias answered him. When I reincarnated you using the 8 pawn pieces, it was too much power for your body to handle at that time. That's why I sealed it away, otherwise it would have broken your body apart. Now that you're stronger thanks to Ichigo's training, I was able to safely unseal some for you. Issei was practically speechless. Thank you. Aisha was now wearing a teary-eyed expression. To think, I was jealous of Bucho when all she was doing was helping Issei-san, she mentally cried. So I was right in thinking that he had potential, huh? More right than I knew apparently, thought the orange-haired Soul Reaper. Issei, said Rias. Become strong. Try to get to the enemy's base and promote to queen. Aim to become the ultimate queen. Okay, if you tell me to do it, then I'll try my best, Issei accepted. Although, as a guy, it feels kind of weird to become a queen. Rias giggles, whilst Ichigo gave a small smirk. Don't worry, Rias consoled. It's just a title. After about a minute, Rias lifted Issei's head. I think that's enough, the others are back. Okay, Issei complied as he sat up straight. The door opened as Kiba, Koneko and Akino entered the clubroom. Bucho, we're finished, reported Kiba. Thank you, replied Rias gratefully as she stood back up. Here's what I plan to do. Yuto, I want you to go into the forest and deal with any pieces that Risers put there. They'll most likely be pawns. Issei and Koneko, I want you to go to the gym building. Ichigo, please go with them to provide support. They'll most likely be pawns again, but there's a high chance that Riser will place a rook there as well. Once you've disabled them, let Akino know. Then, evacuate the building so that she can destroy it. After that, move to the sports field. Aisha, I want you to stay with me. It'll be bad if our healer gets injured or taken out the match. The two of us will move later on in the game. Everyone else nodded in agreement. All right, my adorable servants and trusted friends. Our enemy is Riser Phoenix, a high-class devil. Let's go together and show him defeat, she commanded. Yes, they all cheered, even though Ichigo's was more of an all right. Without any further ado, the appointed members opened the window before leaping out. Duplicate, Kuo Academy, gym building. Ichigo, Issei and Koneko were in the shadows at the back of the gym. To be more precise, they were on backstage, behind the curtains. Cautiously peeking through a gap, they saw the enemy. There were the two twins, the girl who tried to strike Issei, called Myra, as well as another girl with black hair and white hair buns who was wearing what looked like Chinese-style clothing. 3 pawns and 1 rook, stated Koneko in a whisper. Suddenly, one of them called out, intending for them to hear. Come out, servants of Gremory. We know you're there. DMN, muttered Issei. I was hoping we could surprise attack them. Let's go, said Koneko monotonously as she stood up. Her 2 companions soon did the same. Calmly, the 3 of them entered into the open area of the gym hall. Boosted gear, whispered Issei, summoning his sacred gear into existence. Stand by. Ichigo-senpai, Issei-senpai, said Koneko in a low voice. That rook will be my opponent. Fight like with like, hey, commented Ichigo, not taking his gaze off their opponents. Fine with me. I guess that means we'll take the pawns, chipped in Issei. All right, Drake, let's do this. What are you doing just standing there and talking with each other? Questioned the rook. Come down and fight us, or are you too afraid? Without any further words, Ichigo and the 2 members of the Gremory peerage jumped off the stage towards their agreed opponents. Koneko was before the enemy rook, whilst the 2 guys were in front of the 3 pawns. Issei's first boost occurred. The 2 rooks wasted no time in beginning their battle. Koneko easily evaded the hostile strikes, the petite girl making small yet quick movements that allowed her to weave through them gracefully. Ichigo could tell that she was just biding her time before she retaliated with her own assault. Disassembling time cheered the two twins a little too gleefully as they set their shoulder bags down. That sent some minor alarms off in Ichigo's mind. I have a feeling that this is going to be crazy, but still serious, he thought apprehensively. Suddenly, the two twins pulled out chainsaws and revved the machines to life. What the hell? Screamed Issei in disbelief. What the hell are you two doing with dangerous things like that? This battle is for Riza-sama, they announced in unison, as though they hadn't even heard the brown-haired pawn. So that's why, please die. Without warning, the twins and the third pawn charged towards Ichigo and Issei with their respective weapons. Issei rushed forward to engage Myra, whilst Ichigo faced the twins. Using his armored hands, the teenage substitute deflected the first chainsaw by punching it with his right hand. The second sister came from behind and attempted to land a hit, but Ichigo spun around and smacked the dangerous tool off its intended course. He heard Drake's voice cry out from Issei's gauntlet as his second boost took place. Without warning, the twins switched their target to the resident pervert. Take him out now before he has the chance to get strong enough, one of them ordered Myra as they approached him. Issei leaped away from the staff-wielding pawn and turned to face the twins of destruction. He ducked under the first chainsaw, then blocked the second using the boosted gear. Before Myra could take advantage of the situation and strike him, Ichigo arrived in front of her and kicked the staff out of her hands. As she jumped back to try and catch it, he grabbed Zangetsu's handle, causing the impromptu cloth sheath to unravel from the blade. Without a second's delay, he rushed to the one twin that was trying to land a hit on Issei and batted her chainsaw away with his Zanpakuto. Issei's third boost occurred as he swung his arm outwards, consequently forcing the twin that he was blocking away. All right, let's go, boosted gear, he commanded as he raised his covered left arm into the air. Explosion, shouted Drake's voice in response. Issei was briefly enshrouded in an emerald green aura. Checking on Koneko, Ichigo saw that she was brutally striking Riza's rook with a fast flurry of punches. He turned his focus back on the current Red Dragon Emperor. Issei had charged forth, sidestepped the chainsaw of one of the twins, then smacked her on the back with enough force that she was sent to the floor. However, the orange-haired teen's observant eyes noticed a red magic circle briefly appear after the contact of Issei's hand. "How dare you hit my sister?" screamed the other twin in fury as she bolted towards Issei, wanting revenge. She lunged at him to cover the ground between them more quickly. Issei smirked as he ran behind her and delivered a swift palm strike to her back also, sending her sprawling next to her sister. Again, Ichigo saw a red magic circle flash a second after the contact. "What the hell's going on?" asked the first one in surprise and a hint of fear. "There's no way that he's the same weakling from before, he's like an entirely different person." Myra rushed towards the Gremory pawn, readying her staff. Issei turned around and grabbed her stick firmly with his left hand when she swung it towards him. He momentarily reared his right fist back before punching the stick in the middle, snapping it in half. Using his enemy's shock to his advantage, Issei moved behind her and punched her in the back, sending her to join her fellow pawns on the floor. Just like the other two, the red magic circle had appeared for a moment just after Issei touched her. The two teens turned to look to Koneko. The enemy rook was lying down on the floor with bruises all over her body, as well as Koneko sitting on her back and holding her hands in place, restricting her movement. "All right," said Issei dramatically, drawing everyone's attention to him. "It's time to use my secret killer technique that I've been developing." "Secret technique?" Ichigo questioned mentally. He actually made his own move? Issei raised his gauntlet-clad hand into the air. "Dress break," he shouted as he clicked his fingers, his bat-like devil wings bursting out. Almost immediately, the clothes of the three down pawns shredded away into nothingness, leaving them as exposed as the day they were born. Naturally, all three gave a high-pitched scream in response and desperately tried to cover themselves as best as they could, with the twins hiding behind their chainsaws. Issei, on the other hand, was practically drooling as he marveled at the sight before him. He began to cheer excitedly in triumph. "Wow! It really worked! My super technique, which allows me to truly appreciate a dash. He never got to finish his sentence, because a certain orange-haired Soul Reaper smacked the back of his head with such power behind the blow that Issei crashed face first into the floor, making a spider web of cracks. What the hell's wrong with you, you creep? Ichigo roared in fury at the resident pervert. Issei started to whimper as tears streamed from his eyes. Sob asterisk, senpai, you're a traitor to the Y chromosome. Disgusting, stated Koneko coldly, causing Issei to flinch as though he'd been stabbed. Sighing in annoyance, Ichigo began walking up to the three unfortunate girls. What are you doing? Demanded the one called Myra. Yeah. Stay away from us, said one of the twins. Stop jumping to conclusions, Ichigo chastised them with an annoyed frown on his face. He took the outer coat of his uniform off and threw it to them. The three pawns looked at him blankly for a second before they registered what he'd done and picked up the black overcoat. They huddled together and used it to cover themselves. Thanks, they muttered. Suddenly, Ria's voice sounded in their ears, via the communicators. Hello? Ichigo, can you please tell me the situation? She asked. Yeah, replied Ichigo. Rise's pieces have been subdued. All right, everyone please evacuate the building so that Akino can destroy it with her attack. Ichigo, Koneko, and Issei all began rushing towards the gym's exit. Hey! Where do you think you're going? Shouted the rook whom Koneko had defeated. This building is an important strategic location in this match. But her words fell on deaf ears as the trio continued making their way out. Whilst they were moving, in a second, Ichigo shifted his clothes to his casual clothes before switching it back to his Soul Reaper uniform, thus restoring his black overcoat. When they arrived in the open air outside, Issei contacted Rias. Bucho, we've left the gym building, he informed her. Good, now stand by, Rias instructed. They all turned around to face the building. In the next second, a huge yellow thunderbolt descended onto the structure, completely obliterating it. Riser Phoenix's 3 pawns and 1 rook retire, announced Grafia over the intercom. Looking up, the 3 of them saw Akino flying in the air, her wings out. All right. Way to go, Akino-san. Issei cheered in congratulations. Yufufufu, it was my pleasure, giggled Akino before she flew away. That was some great teamwork, right Koneko-chan? Issei asked as he raised his hand for a high five with the white-haired rook. Don't touch me, rejected Koneko icily. Ichigo raised his right fist slightly. Issei, I swear if you dare try to do that again. Hey! I'd never use it on a comrade. Issei protested as he waved his hands in denial. Issei, Ichigo and Koneko, said Rias, move on to the woods and meet up with Yuto. Akino's on standby until I give her another order, or the need arises. Okay Bucho, we're on our way, confirmed Issei. Without warning, Ichigo's battle instincts kicked in, warning him of approaching danger. Without a word, he spun round to face Koneko with the speed of lightning, put his arms around her shoulders and got a firm hold on the surprised rook before he flash-stepped a few paces away. He was just in time too, for a large explosion struck where the small girl had been standing just a second ago, creating a reasonably sized crater. Koneko subconsciously held onto her protector's shirt when she thought of what would have happened if he hadn't saved her. Oh, what's this? Spoke an arrogant voice. I didn't expect you pathetic weaklings to be able to avoid that attack. Especially when your guard should have been down due to your recent little victory. Seems that you deserve some credit after all. Looking up, the 3 of them saw Riser's queen, Yuba Luna, flying above them. The woman had a smug look etched into her face, which only served to further aggravate Ichigo. He fixed her with a deadly glare as he gently let go of Koneko. Issei's fists were shaking in anger. That was a cowardly move, the teenage substitute Soul Reaper growled. In battle you can use any means to get victory, she countered proudly. We can afford a little loss like this because your group is so small. It doesn't matter if we have to sacrifice a few pieces. Her last statement practically drove Ichigo up the figurative wall. He was ready to unsheath his Zanpakuto and knock her down a few notches. However, before any action could be taken, Rise's queen was forced to take evasive maneuvers and dodge an oncoming thunderbolt. Ara, it's not very nice to try and attack my friends in such an underhanded manner, Akino chastised as she arrived above her team members. Her right hand was sparking with a few remnants of electricity. Your opponent will be me, Yuba Luna-san. Although her words were polite, the last part of her small speech contained a noticeable, almost tangible sharpness. Akino-san. Issei called out. Even though the Priestess of Thunder didn't look towards him, he knew she was listening. Make sure you beat her. Don't worry, Aizen, Akino reassured. I'll be just fine. You should get going, after all you have your own part to play in this fight too. Hey, Akino, Ichigo called out. She nodded to show that she was listening. Conductivity was all Ichigo said to her. Akino nodded, knowing what Ichigo was referring to straight away. It was a little tactic that he'd taught her during their training. Ichigo and the two Gremory Peerage members turned on their heels and took off for the forest, Ichigo holding himself back so he didn't leave Issei and Koneko behind. So you'll face me alone, Priestess of Thunder? Questioned Yuba Luna smugly. Especially when you just performed such a large magic attack? Oh, don't worry, reassured Akino playfully. My receives still have more than enough magic and I only need a moment to recharge, Bomb Queen. Rise's queen scowled. I hate that name because of its bad taste, she spat. Enough talking. I won't allow you to interfere with Rise-sama. She then threw a fireball at the raven-haired teen. Akino swiftly evaded by flying around it, then retaliated by throwing a small thunderbolt at her enemy. Yuba Luna negated the attack by hurling a firebomb into it, causing a small explosion in the air. As the two queens were getting into their aerial combat, Ichigo and his two companions were approaching the border of the forest. Garifia's voice rang out as she made another announcement. Riser Phoenix's 3 pawns retire. That must be Kiba's doing, the teenage Soul Reaper commented. Yeah, agreed Issei. I never thought I'd say this, but way to go, pretty boy. Koneko simply nodded with a slight hum to show that she was of like mind. The trio entered the array of trees, moving with caution in case any of Riser's servants were lurking about. They continued proceeding through the sea of wood without a word between them. Soon, Ichigo caught the sound of soft footsteps approaching their position. He raised his hand as a signal for Koneko and Issei to halt their movements. Closing his eyes, he spread his senses out in an attempt to identify the spiritual pressure signature. Within a second or two he recognized it as Ria's knight. It's all right, he told the other two. It's just Kiba coming towards us. True to the orange-haired teen's words, the blonde Prince Charming of the school stumbled through a bush a moment later, entering their view. After regaining his composure, he looked towards the group. It's good to see that you're all fine, Ichigo, Issei-kun, Koneko-chan, he stated with his signature smile in place. Good to see that you're still in fighting condition too, replied Ichigo. By the way, nice going with the 3 pawns, complimented Issei. Good to see you. Yuto-senpai, Koneko responded. Let's get going, suggested Kiba. We need to reach Riser's base. The 4 of them turned in the appropriate direction and proceeded to move along stealthily, yet at the same time fairly quickly. Destroyed gym building site. Thunderbolts and fireballs danced through the air as the 2 opposing queens relentlessly attacked one another. Akino threw another thunderbolt at an oncoming fireball, her strike piercing through her enemies and continuing on towards the other queen. Unfortunately for her, Yuba Luna dodged it at the last second. Akino's Miko uniform had a few minor rips in its fabric. Yuba Luna's scanty clothing was also a little torn, and she had a few small marks on some of her exposed skin. My, you're quite troublesome, Akino complained out loud. It looks like I'll have to change tactics. Oh? And just what would that be? Inquired Yuba Luna. Instead of receiving a verbal response, she was unexpectedly soaked by a spray of water that Akino had flung at her. Yubaluna blinked as her mind processed what Ria's queen had done to her. Was that it? She asked. Just make me wet with water? I have to say, it's rather underwhelming. She was soaked by the black-haired girl again. But this time, she actually got annoyed. You little brat, she growled through gritted teeth. Fine. Carry on acting so stupid. I'll just put you out of your misery right now. The woman in magician-like clothing then hurled another one of her trademark firebombs at Akino, then followed it up with 3 fireballs that trailed behind it. Akino countered by sending a large wave of water at the approaching fire. Following it up, she quickly sent a relatively small stream of water straight after it, then a small thunderbolt just after that. Her first wave of water extinguished her opponent's fire attacks, with just under half of it still remaining. It was then hit by the stream that she'd fired, taking it forward with the already moving water, and the thunderbolt was close behind. Yubaluna was consequently soaked for the 3rd time. Before she could scream in frustration, however, she was struck by the thunderbolt. The electricity assaulted her like there was no tomorrow, shocking her eagerly. Amidst the pain, it then registered in some back part of her mind why Ria's queen had soaked her. The water was acting as a conductor for the electricity in the thunderbolt. Since her full body was drenched, there was no part that it couldn't easily access. Thunder Javelin! Akino shouted out as she raised her right hand high above her head before bringing it down and keeping it outstretched towards her enemy. A mere moment after her words, a huge lightning bolt the size of a transport coach crashed down onto Yubaluna. When the attack eventually dissipated, Yubaluna's heavily electrocuted body fell to the ground. She was still conscious, although barely. She had just enough strength to move her arms. Slowly, her muscles burning with pain, she retrieved her hidden vial of phoenix tears. The extreme damage dealt to her was quickly taking its toll, her vision growing darker by the second as she felt her grip on consciousness rapidly declining. Raising the small bottle to her mouth, she pulled out the stopper with her teeth and quickly began drinking the liquid. In an instant, she felt all the pain and fatigue vanish as her body was rejuvenated and restored to its prime condition. Using a sudden burst of speed, she shot back up into the air and hurled a firebomb at an off-guard Akino. The attack met its intended target, causing Akino to gasp with pain as she began to spiral down. Before she hit the ground though, the Priestess of Thunder recovered and flew back up to be level with the Bomb Queen. Forest, near the new school building. The foreground assault members of Ria's team were crouching down near the edge of the forest. The enemy base was within sight. So were Riser's remaining pieces. 2 pawns, 2 bishops, 2 knights and 1 rook. Issei was visibly nervous, his full body vibrating. He jumped slightly when Kiba tapped him on the shoulder. Issei-kun, he called. What do you want? The pawn replied in a slightly snappy tone. And don't scare me like that. Are you nervous? Asked Kiba kindly. Well, of course I am. Issei answered. I mean, why wouldn't I be? I don't have any combat experience and there's so many of them. I'm also nervous, responded Kiba, raising his right hand slightly so that his comrade could see it. His hand was visibly trembling. What the? Even Kiba's nervous? Issei thought in surprise. Ichigo blocked out their conversation as he checked up on Akino's spiritual pressure. His eyes widened at what he ended up reading. Koneko noticed his reaction from her position next to him. Ichigo-senpai, what's wrong? The white-haired girl asked. It's Akino, he told her. She's in a tight situation. Before the small rook could inquire further, they all heard one of Riser's knights walking forward and declaring a challenge to them, saying that she was tired of waiting and wishing to have a true sword fight, etc. Ha ha, chuckled Kiba. Well, my honor and pride as a knight won't allow me to let this declaration go unchallenged. He began to get up to his feet. Hey guys, listen up, Ichigo said as he stood up, catching their attention. It seems like Akino's in a bit of a bind. I'm going to go help her out. Make sure you don't lose here, okay? Don't worry, everything'll be fine, remarked Issei, a serious resolve in his brown eyes. Just leave it to us. All right, don't let all my training go to waste, Ichigo told him with a smile. Go and show them what the Red Dragon Emperor can do. Yes, sir. I'll show the fruits of my training, Issei declared proudly. The orange-haired teen turned around and began speeding off towards the location where he could sense the two queens of each peerage battling fiercely. Destroyed gym building site. Akino hastily launched a sphere of water at the oncoming fireball before being forced to swerve to the left to avoid another. She quickly turned around and threw a thunderbolt towards a firebomb, causing both attacks to explode in midair. She was beginning to breathe quite heavily from the effort and exhaustion. She'd used up a vast majority of her magical reserves when she'd attacked Riser's queen before, believing that it would be a finishing blow. But then her opponent healed herself completely using her bottle of phoenix tears. At the moment, the raven-haired was pretty much running on fumes. Hearing a sizzling sound, she saw another firebomb being flung towards her, however this one was 10 times larger than the previous ones. She was preparing to create whatever counter or defense she could currently muster, but was cut off by a large shout that she recognized. Getsuga Tensho! Out of nowhere, a large, crescent wave of light blue energy charged into the hostile attack, negating it entirely. Suddenly, Akino felt the presence of someone standing or flying besides her, on her right. Looking in that direction, she saw Ichigo standing on the air next to her. Sorry I'm late, he apologized, not taking his focus off the enemy queen in front of him. Well, better late than never, Akino replied with her usual smile. Just stay on the side for now, I've got this, the teenage substitute ordered as he began moving towards Riser's queen. Yuba Luna didn't say anything to the approaching young man. She knew that he'd be dangerous. His power was easily detectable, as though it was leaking out of his very body. Ichigo flash-stepped behind her, catching her by surprise. Before she could look for where he'd seemingly vanished to, he rammed his right fist into her back, making her shout out in pain. Charging the Byakko lightning of his sacred gear, he blasted it out of his fist like a railgun. The blue electricity raced towards the ground, forcing Yuba Luna onwards from behind. She met the floor face first, colliding with it harshly enough to leave an imprint. As she was attempting to start lifting herself out of the dent and off the ground, Ichigo began charging up a ball of lightning just above the open palm of his right hand. Within a mere second, it was the size of a beach ball. Hey Akino, he called out. Come over here would you? Yes, what is it? She inquired as she drew near him. Do you want a part of the finisher? He asked her. What do you mean? She asked him, the confusion present in her purple eyes. Do you want to do a joint attack with me to finish her? Ichigo clarified. Akino's mouth formed a smile. It would be my pleasure, she told him. The raven-haired girl brought her hand close to Ichigo's sphere of lightning. She didn't question it, but for some reason it gave off a slight feeling which felt akin to holy power. Soon, she started adding her own power to the orb. Yellow electricity began arcing around and throughout the ball. Then, it became a swirling, storming mass of light blue and yellow electricity with sparks orbiting around it. With a battle cry, the two allies hurled the attack forward at their target. The ball zipped towards Yuba Luna, a small tail trailing off from it as it moved. Her eyes widened in fear as it approached her. A few moments before it reached her, she began to see it in the image of a tiger made from blue lightning charging towards her with yellow bolts dancing around it wildly. Then, it made contact, which to her vision was seen as the great beast pouncing at her with its claws outstretched. An eruption of the twin colors of the lightning followed, similar to how a geyser would erupt. Riser Phoenix's queen retires, declared Grayfear as she announced their victory. Akino released a large sigh. Her reserves were by now drained close to completely. She felt a hand gently clasp her shoulder. Take it easy for now, instructed Ichigo. She only felt too happy to oblige. I think I'll do just that, she admitted. I'm going for Riser, her orange-haired classmate informed her before flying away. Chapter 13. Dragon's Resolve. Forest, near the new school building. Hey guys, listen up, Ichigo said as he stood up, catching their attention. It seems like Akino's in a bit of a bind. I'm going to go help her out. Make sure you don't lose here, okay? Don't worry, everything be fine, remarked Issei, a serious resolve in his brown eyes. Just leave it to us. All right, don't let all my training go to waste, Ichigo told him with a smile. Go and show them what the Red Dragon Emperor can do. Yes, sir. I'll show the fruits of my training, Issei declared proudly. The orange-haired teen turned around and began speeding off towards the location where he could sense the two queens of each peerage battling fiercely. The remaining members then towards Riser's peerage. Issei summoned the boosted gear and put it into standby mode. Stealing their nerves, they all began to walk out into the open. Kiba began making his way towards the knight who'd issued the challenge, Carloman. I'm the Knight of Ria's Gremory, Yuto Kiba, he announced as he approached. I accept your challenge to a duel. Heh, only someone crazy would come out into the open like you just did, remarked Riser's knight. But I like crazy idiots like you. It makes things much more interesting and enjoyable. Well then, shall we have a passionate battle with our blades, offered Kiba. Well said, Knight of Ria's Gremory, she approved before unsheathing her great sword and charging forward. The blonde-haired teen responded in kind, drawing out his holy eraser. Everyone else had observed the exchange that took place between the two knights. Good grief, muttered one of Riser's pieces, a rook, who had a white half-mask covering the upper portion of her face. She was constantly complaining about how the tactics we were using had no honor to them. It's as though she's displeased with how Riser-sama decided to go about things. Seriously, why did there have to be another sword freak, complained a blonde girl who had her hair in twin drills on either side of her head. She looked very similar to Riser. I thought that finally I'd found a cute guy, but then he turned out to be obsessed with swords just like she is. She then turned her gaze to Issei and Koneko. And then there's you, she stated whilst pointing a finger at Issei. I mean, why would Ria's Gremory even put you in her peerage? Does she have no taste in men or something? Hey, I shouted Issei in protest. Take that back. And don't talk bad about Bucho either. The blonde girl just carried on as though the Gremory pawn hadn't even said anything. That orange-haired guy in the black clothing looked pretty cute, although he's not here with you. He trusts in us enough to go and help someone else whilst leaving us to deal with things here, Issei declared boldly as he fixed the girl with a serious look. And I've had enough of your rambling. Get over here and fight already. The enemy bishop looked at Issei for a second before giggling. Oh, I don't fight, she told him. What? Please take care of this, she told the other members of Riser's peerage as she took a few steps back. The rook in the half-mask stepped forward. I've been looking forward to this, she said. You guys actually seem like you'll be able to give a challenge if you've come this far. Koneko stepped forward. Issei-senpai, I'll take care of this one, she informed him casually. All right, good luck Koneko, Issei consented as he advanced towards the others. Riser's other pieces, save for the blonde bishop, began responding to his move, coming forth themselves. Nice to meet you, I'm the other knight piece of Riser-sama, series, said one of them. However, I don't carry the same ideologies as Carloman. I'll do whatever it takes to beat you. She then dashed towards Issei whilst readying her sword. Issei activated his Longinus, causing the first cry of boost to ring out. He dodged her horizontal swing by ducking under the blade. As soon as he stood up again though, he suddenly felt someone strike his back, then another strike. Turning around, he saw the twin catgirl pawns. You'll never beat us, Naya, taunted the one with blue hair. Because this is a cat fight, finished the one with red hair. Before Issei could respond, he had to leap out of the way as a fireball was sent his way. Looking in the direction of the attack, he saw Riser's other bishop flying in the air. He then noticed that the blonde bishop who looked like Riser was still just standing at the side. What the hell? Why doesn't she fight? He demanded. The enemy rook who was fighting with Koneko heard his outburst. She blocked a punch from the petite rook, but still felt considerable pain shoot through her arm. I can explain that, she told Issei. That girl is Ravel Phoenix, Riser-sama's real BLD sister. What the hell? Exclaimed Issei. Why on earth would he put his own sister into his peerage? Riza-sama said something along these lines, continued the Rook. Flashback, room with Riza's peerage. Riza sat on a throne, surrounded by his personal HRM. You know that little sister FTSH, he inquired to no one in particular. Where you just want to be surrounded by little girls that look up to you and affectionately call you or big brother, or Oni-chan. Well, it's kind of like that. But I don't want people to start thinking that I have a thing for my younger sister, so I keep her in my peerage as a fashion instead. Rating Game Arena, outside the new school building. Seriously? Asked Issei. Riza's Rook nodded in confirmation. What the hell's wrong with that moron? He was then forced to dodge as Siri swung at him again. Although, I suppose a little sister HRM would be pretty sweet. His second boost activated. The two cat girls attempted doing a combination assault on the pawn, but Issei gracefully weaved around them safely. He kicked the red-haired one, who was the one closest to him, in the back. Meanwhile, Kiba and Riza's other knight were engaged in an intense sword fight. Carlemagne ignited her sword with orange flames. Kiba activated his Holy Eraser's special ability, causing the blade to turn pitch black. The two of them clashed fiercely a few times before Kiba's Holy Eraser broke into half. Ha! With your weapon destroyed, you're finished. Riza's knight shouted as she prepared to strike the finishing blow. That's where you're wrong, interjected Ria's knight as he drew a second sword. Its blade consisted completely of ice. Flame Delete, a sword of ice that extinguishes fire. He then parried his opponent's sword, removing the flames and breaking the blade. What? Two sacred gears, exclaimed Carlemagne in shock. Quickly regaining her composure, she unsheathed a second sword. It doesn't matter. In the end, I will still strike you down. They began parrying, blocking, and striking once again. Soon, both of their blades shattered. The enemy knight drew a dagger from a sheath strapped to her leg, setting the tiny weapon alight a second after taking it out. We, of the Phoenix clan, are known for our power over fire and wind, she stated. Taste it with your own flesh. She leaped into the air, preparing to come down on the now unarmed Kiba. I don't think so, rejected the Prince of Kuo Academy calmly. From the hilt in his hands, a blade began to form. The completed sword had a hollowed-out, diamond-shaped section at the top. Replenish calm. He blocked his adversary's strike as she descended. Another sacred gear, commented Carlemagne in disbelief. Are you someone who takes the sacred gears of others and makes them your own? I don't take sacred gears, replied Kiba whilst a small black orb formed in the diamond-shaped gap of his sword. It then proceeded to SCK away all the flames that were wrapped around the enemy knight's dagger. I make them. Taking advantage of her shock, Kiba deflected the dagger away and out of her hands before delivering a rapid cross-slash to her midsection. Riza's knight screamed out in pain. Her body began to glow with a blue light until it vanished into a dispersion of light blue particles of energy. Riza Phoenix's one knight retires, announced Greyfear. Kiba turned to face his two friends as he quickly started to make his way to help them. Issei dodged a fireball as he bounded across the sports field. His fifth boost took place. All right, I should have enough power now to do a finisher, he thought. Quickly take him out before he gets enough boosts. Ravel shouted an order to the others who were actually fighting Ria's pawn. Stupid brat, one of Riza's twin pawns muttered under her breath. She just orders us around all day without even doing anything herself, grumbled the other in agreement. Before I get enough, thought Issei as the cat girls and knight began racing towards him. Sorry, but it's already a bit too late for that. Explosion, he commanded. Drake's voice immediately boomed from the crystal of his gauntlet, mirroring his words. Don't underestimate me. I'm not the same person from 10 days ago. Issei rushed forwards as his attackers approached. He jumped over the blue-haired pawn before kicking her in the back. Then, he caught her by the tail before she could go flying off and spun around, releasing his hold after doing a complete 180 turn. He ran towards the approaching knight, Ceres, moving out the way of an incoming fireball as he did so. The brown-haired teen punched her sword out of her hands using his gauntleted left fist. He followed the hit up by palm striking her in the stomach with his right hand. A second after the contact, as the knight's body suffered from the recoil, a red magic circle briefly glowed. Ceres fell to the floor on her backside. When she stood back up, Issei clicked his fingers with his eyes closed and his hand at eye level. Immediately, the poor girl's clothes shredded away into nothingness. She squealed in a mixture of shock and embarrassment as she tried covering her bare body with her limbs. Riser's other pieces who were attacking Ria's pawn froze as they stared on in awe, unable to comprehend what had just took place before them. Issei charged up a marble-sized sphere of his magic power. He then grabbed the orb in his left fist. "I really don't like having to hit girls, so I'm really sorry about this," the resident pervert told her before proceeding to smash his armored fist into her abdomen. An impact ring was generated from the force contained within the attack before a burst of red energy exploded around Issei's fist. Ceres felt the majority of the bones in her body break, screaming in agony whilst she was sent flying away. Her body began to get bathed in a light blue glow. Koneko evaded another of her enemy's punches. She saw the mouth of the older woman morph into a snarl out of frustration. She threw yet another punch at the white-haired rook. Koneko grabbed the offending fist before throwing her opponent over her shoulder. Riser's rook grunted from the impact of when her body met the ground. Wasting no time, Koneko swiftly executed a strong elbow drop onto her exposed stomach. The masked woman gave a brief shout of pain as the air was knocked out of her body. While her foe was trying to recover, Ria's rook grabbed her lying form's right foot and hurled her above her head, launching her into the air. Koneko readied her right fist as her adversary began to descend. However, the falling woman was suddenly crashed into by shrieking D-girl who was glowing a light blue. The rook gave a shout of pain from the impact of the collision. Both hit the floor at roughly the same time, then were transported out of the arena in a flash of light blue specks. The white-haired rook looked in the direction that the other person had entered from. She saw Issei with his fist outstretched, as though he'd just delivered a punch. Riser Phoenix's rook and knight retire, declared Grayfear a moment after the two had vanished. "All right," cheered Issei victoriously. "Got two in one. Even if it kind of was an accident." "Nice work, Issei-kun," complimented Kiba as he and Koneko approached their comrade. "Thanks," replied Issei appreciatively. "By the way, good going with your own fight." The first of his new series of boosts occurred. The trio of Gremory members looked towards Riser's remaining pieces. There were only the twin pawns and the two bishops, one of which was Riser's sister Ravel. "Don't think that you've won yet," said the pawn with blue hair. "Yeah, we won't let you get past us so easily," her sister backed up. "Besides, Yuba Luna is going to come soon and get rid of you all," stated the bishop matter-of-factly. Just after that moment, Grayfear's announcement was heard loud and clear. "Riser Phoenix's queen retires." "You were saying," remarked Issei with a smug smile etched on his face. Riser's servants went into a state of stupor at the news. Ravel was the first to snap out of it. "So what?" she asked. "You still don't stand a chance of defeating Oni-sama." She then pointed to the roof. "Look, your beloved MSTR is already up there against him, and she doesn't look too good to me." Everyone directed their focus to the rooftop. True enough, there was Rias and Aisha facing off against Riser. Rias looked a little out of breath, whilst Riser was standing there as confident-looking as ever. Riser's pieces began to feel reassured at seeing their MSTR having the upper hand. Issei's second boost happened, but no one really noticed it. "Damn it!" Issei mentally cursed. "I have to do something. I can't just leave Bucho by herself like that, I have to help her." He looked to his sacred gear. "Hey Drake," he whispered silently, the sound reaching his ears only. "Sacred gears evolve and change according to the will of their users, right?" "Yes," the Welsh dragon telepathically replied. "Then show me," demanded Issei. He then shouted, "Show me what you can do," as he raised his left arm high above his head. "Come on, he desperately thought. I really need your help right now. I'm supposed to protect what's dear to me, right? That's my duty as a man, right? He began to feel power welling up within him. Well, I want to protect everyone here. And I want to give Bucho her freedom that she more than deserves. Suddenly, the boosted gear was enveloped in a bright light, drawing everyone's attention to the brown-haired boy. Boosted gear, second liberation. Drake's voice shouted out whilst simultaneously the light around the boosted gear burst away, revealing it in a new form. The most notable changes were that it was longer and now had 2 crystals on it. This is your new power, Drake told his host. The boosted gear gift. It allows you to transfer your charged power to whatever you want, even inanimate objects. As the newest Red Dragon Emperor processed the information given to him, his third boost took place. A second after, Issei was struck by a flash of inspiration. It was just as well too, for Rise's peerage members began charging at the trio, recognizing Issei as a viable threat. Kiba! Release your sacred gear, he commanded. What? Asked the knight in confusion. What do you mean? Just do it. All right, here goes, said Kiba. He dropped to his knees, slamming his palms to the ground. Sword BRTH, he howled. Boosted gear gift. Issei roared as he punched the ground, sending the energy into the uncountable swords that were forming. Massive blades began erupting out of the ground around them without warning. The unexpected attack impaled all of their advancing opponents, except for Ravel, who took straight to the air with her wings of fire. Since she had been standing at the back, she'd managed to narrowly avoid being speared by the emerging swords. Riser Phoenix's 2 pawns and 1 bishop retire, Grafia systematically informed after the said members had been removed from the battle. Powerful, Koneko commented upon seeing the strength of the attack. Wow, I have to admit, I wasn't expecting anything like this, Kiba observed in awe as he took in the field of demonic swords. Ha ha, neither was I, admitted Issei. But I just had a gut feeling that it would work out. He then remembered their MSTR's situation. We need to get to Bucho. Kiba gave him an encouraging smile. Go on, Issei, he told his fellow peerage member. You're the only one who can make a difference now. Well, Ichigo too, but that's besides the point. You're our game changer. Issei Senpai has become stronger, agreed the stoic Rook. I believe in you. Like Ichigo Senpai does. Besides, I feel like taking a small break, Kiba said in a light-hearted tone. The brown-haired pawn didn't know what to say. He didn't want to openly admit it, but he knew that his 2 friends before him were much stronger than him. They'd been with Riez for longer than he had, were better combatants than he was, yet they were telling him to be the one to go on. I don't, he stammered as he struggled to come up with the right words. He finally sighed in resignation. Thank you, both of you. This means a lot to me. He then turned around and started sprinting towards the new school building. When he reached the doors a few seconds later, he heard someone land behind him. Turning around, he saw that it was Ravel. What do you think you're doing? She asked him with genuine curiosity. Don't you know that you can't possibly beat Oni-sama? Issei fixed the blonde girl with such an intense and serious stare that she subconsciously flinched a little. I don't care about any of that, he bravely declared. All I care about is Bucho's happiness. I owe her my life. To me, seeing her happy is all that I need to be content. That's what's precious to me. It's a guy's duty to protect what he holds dear to himself, so that's why I'll fight for Bucho till the end. I'll fight for her freedom and happiness, so that she can live how she wants. Ravel gained a slight blush across her cheeks as she began to see the teen in a new light. She started to feel a weird sensation in her chest. I don't like having to fight girls, he stated. But if you get in my way or try to stop me, I won't hesitate to take you down. With that, he turned around and vanished into the building. Rooftop. Riser stood arrogantly as he faced Riaz. The crimson-haired girl was breathing heavily and her uniform was torn in a few places. Behind her, Aisha had a worried expression on her face. "Stop this foolishness already, Riaz," Riza chuckled. "You're nearing your limit, and your pretty little bishop can't keep protecting you forever." "No," Riaz refuted firmly. "Besides, your peerage have all been defeated, whilst I still have all of my beloved friends." "Do you really think that makes a difference?" Riza inquired carkily. "They'll never be able to take me down." While he wouldn't admit it out loud, he had been surprised at first. He had taken Ria's first few hits without a care in the world, however, that quickly changed when he felt how powerful her shots of destruction were. He didn't think that she'd reach such a level just within a mere 10 days. After that was when he took her seriously, avoiding her attacks and retaliating with his own. Plus, it seemed as though Ria's extra help, the orange-haired boy, was no longer doing anything, so that was a bonus for him. Student Council Room. As Issei entered the room, he wasted no time in making his way to the other end. "Promotion, Queen," he muttered as he moved along, feeling a rush of power flow into him. Quickly he began to go towards the way to the rooftop. Rooftop. Riza was creating a large, spinning ball of fire in his hand, intending to throw it at Riaz and Aisha. His proud smirk was plastered on his face all the while. "Dragon shot," came a loud cry as a red laser rushed into Riza, incinerating his arm and destroying the fireball. Issei then ran in front of Riaz and Aisha. "Issei Hayadu is here," he declared heroically. Issei-san," exclaimed the king and bishop in a mix of surprise and relief. "You," snarled Riza once whilst his arm was in the process of regenerating. "How dare you strike me, you low-class trash?" "Shut the hell up, butt," Issei refuted fiercely. "I'm going to beat you up myself right now. I won't let you take Bucho's freedom away from her." Ria's cheeks reddened slightly upon hearing his outburst. "Oh, and just what are you going to do?" asked Riza mockingly. Issei took a deep breath, clenching his left hand into a fist as he did so. "Drake, let's make the deal," he said. "Partner, are you sure about this?" asked Drake. "Yeah," confirmed the pawn. "I've never been surer of anything in my entire life." "Issei, what are you talking about?" asked Riaz, but her brown-haired servant didn't hear her. "What deal?" Flashback, Issei's room. Issei sat alone on his bed, having just changed into his school uniform for the upcoming rating game. He raised his left hand and spoke to it. "Hey, Drake, are you there?" "Yes, what is it, partner?" his draconic tenant replied. "I wanted to ask you something," said Issei. "I'm listening." "Is there any way that I can get stronger for this match, besides training?" he asked. "Something that I can use to give me a sudden edge, especially up against that stupid turkey? I mean, I'm grateful for Ichigo's training and it's worked wonders for me, but I still feel like I'll need more. At least something that I can fall back on." "Well, there is one thing," answered Drake. "But it comes at a cost." "What is it?" "I'll do almost anything. It will be an incomplete version, but I can allow you to access Balance Breaker, the ultimate form a sacred gear can take. But you will have to sacrifice a part of your body to me, and you'll only be able to use it for 30 seconds. Your body won't be able to handle any more than that, I'm afraid." Issei considered his options. "How about we put it on hold? I'll tell you when I think I'm going to need it and we do the deal then?" "That's fine with me, partner." Rating game, rooftop. "All right, partner, then I'll take your arm as payment now," accepted Drake. Issei punched his left arm forward. "Shine on!" "Overbooster," he shouted out as a magnificent emerald light shone out from the main crystal of the boosted gear. "Welsh Dragon Overbooster," boomed Drake. Red lines appeared around Issei's body, like a 3D net of something. Then, red draconic armor manifested around the teen, making him look like some sort of dragon knight. "Boosted gear scale male," he roared once it had finished forming. "What?" "Balance breaker." Riza shouted in disbelief with wide eyes as Issei charged towards him. Capitalizing on his foe's distraction, Issei delivered a powerful right hook to Riser's jaw, sending him off the roof and towards the ground. The armor-clad teen jumped after him. "Remember, you've only got 30 seconds, the red dragon reminded him. "I know, that's more than enough time to beat him into a pulp. I used some of my power to give you an extra few seconds. The countdown begins, now." Drake informed as his partner touched down. Riser immediately rose back to his feet. He'd gotten over his initial shock and was now infuriated at the mere boy that dared to defy him. To add insult to injury, he'd actually allowed himself to get knocked down by the boy in his carelessness. He would make sure not to repeat that mistake. "Don't get ahead of yourself, brat," he spat as he leaped at the teen. "Just because the dragon gave you some power, it doesn't mean anything." Issei also sprang forward, intending to hit Riser again. The two clashed and began trading blows in a frenzy. Secretly, Riser was actually impressed at the pawn's progress. To go so far in just 10 days, it was as though he was a completely different person compared to when they'd first met. Both fighters reared their fists back before ramming them into the other's jaw. The force sent the two of them flying back. Riser felt his injuries already regenerating, whilst Issei's armor protected him from most of the damage, the only thing having affected him being the impact of the Phoenix's blows. "Not bad, boy," complimented Riser. "But can you keep up?" "Like hell I'll lose to you," Issei declared as he rushed forward using his jet boosters, catching Riser off guard with his sudden speed. He drove his left fist into the older male's gut, sending him sprawling. Riser recovered mid-roll and got back on his feet. He unleashed his fiery wings as he began to fly whilst creating a large sphere of flames in his right hand. Firebird and Fenghuang, our family's flames was praised as being equal to that of a phoenix. Taste it for yourself. Your pitiful flames will never burn me. Issei propelled himself towards Riser, readying his fist in the process. Emerald green energy began charging up around his enclosed hand. With a roar, the two of them attacked at the same time, meeting each other head-on. Again, both were knocked to the ground, this time making a light indent when they collided with it. "Damn it, that actually hurt right then," he complained to himself as he got back up. "Be careful. The flames of a phoenix can damage even the scales of a dragon," warned Drake. 20 seconds remaining. As Riser had just got to his feet, Issei was on him like a wild predator. "Bucho," he called out, instantly gaining the redhead's focus whilst he smashed his opponent in the face. "I don't have Kiba's unmatchable speed." He executed a knee move into the blonde's gut, making him choke out saliva as he doubled over. "I don't have Koneko-chan's unbelievable strength." Without giving the high-class devil a chance to recover, he delivered a swift uppercut to Riser's chin. "I don't have Akino-san's magical prowess or Asia's wonderful healing." He kicked Riser in the side with his right leg. "And I can't even compare with Ichigo," he declared, punching the young man in the chest with his left fist. "But I will still do everything I can to become your ultimate pawn." As his enemy flew back, the draconic teen clashed his fists together and began charging a large quantity of emerald-colored energy between them. It quickly grew to the size of his torso. "Dragon Blast," he roared as he fired the concentrated, laser-like attack towards his nemesis. Riser saw the oncoming mass of power a few seconds before it struck him. At the last second, he had desperately thrown the strongest fireball he could create in such a short time at it, lessening the damage dealt somewhat. He slowly got back to his feet, the majority of his body alight as his, now slower, regeneration began repairing it. "Wow, Issei-kun's become quite the phenomenon, hasn't he?" remarked Kiba. "Yes," agreed Koneko. "He's become strong." Rias watched her beloved pawn in wonder as he fought for her. She felt so happy that he was doing all this for her. Ravel observed the fight in amazement. She'd never seen anyone fight with her brother so evenly. Her heart began to hammer within her chest and she felt her face heat up as she continued looking at the boy in the red balance breaker. What's going on? She mentally panicked. Why am I feeling like this? And over him? 15 seconds left, notified Drake. Riza glared at the brown-haired pawn. The boy's armor was proving to be quite formidable. Still, something seemed off about it. More specifically, his left arm. Riza concentrated on that particular limb. Somehow, it seemed different to the rest of the armor. It was almost as though it was alive. You gave your arm to the dragon. Riza blurted out when the realization dawned on him. That particular outburst caught everyone's attention. Are you insane? It'll never turn back to normal. So what? Demanded Issei. This is nothing if it's for Bucho's sake. I owe her my life. If I have to sacrifice my body to help her, then I'll do it without a second thought. You're dangerous, stated Riza darkly. That's why I'm going to put you down this instant. He created a large sphere of fire above his head, its size equaling a small house. He flung the burning ball at Issei, who jumped out of the way with help from his armor's thrusters and retaliated with a quick dragon shot. Riza immediately faced Issei when the teen touched down onto the ground. Issei began charging his energy around his left arm. Although, what began charging up around his gauntlet wasn't emerald green in color. It was a shining, swirling amalgamation of all the colors of the rainbow. What are you doing? Riza asked in slight fear. All this time, my friends have been teaching me important lessons, said Issei as the light around his arm increased in intensity. With everyone's help, there's no way I'll ever lose to you. Stop that right now. You're getting in the way of everything. Riza unleashed a wave of flames towards the Red Dragon Emperor in his fury. Once again, Issei evaded it. 10 seconds remaining, alerted Drake. Kiba taught me to observe my opponents and anticipate their movements, he began. Akino-san taught me to feel the flow of magic within my body. Koneko taught me to aim for the center of my opponent's body. Ichigo taught me to keep my resolve strong and believe in my own power. If I'm going to hit someone, I will hit them. The crystal on his gauntlet began shining a magnificent white. Stop! Don't you know that this marriage is vital for the future of devils? Insisted Riza. A low class like you shouldn't interfere in matters like this. You're ruining our chances of keeping the pure BLD devils alive. Things like class don't matter to me. Issei countered. The only thing I give a DMN about is Bucho. You're trying to force her into marriage just for your own selfish ends. You're just trampling all over her own wishes and freedom. 5 seconds left. Drake warned his host. That's more than enough reason for me to beat the CRP out of you. Issei roared in declaration as he began rocketing towards Riza, rearing his left fist back in preparation for his big strike. 4, announced Drake. 3. Issei slammed his fist into his enemy's abdomen with all his might, shouting a loud battle cry as he did so. Riza retched up BLD as the teen's fist pulverized his insides. The concentrated magic power enshrouding it hit him with the force of a truck. 2. Proclaimed Drake as Riza was sent flying away whilst groaning. Everyone else watched the spectacle in awe. 1. Count over. Issei's dragon armor dispersed into red flecks of energy before he dropped to his knees, exhaustion taking the better of him. Absent-mindedly, he heard Ravel cry out in concern as she rushed over to her downed brother. I actually did it, he thought happily. Riza gritted his teeth as he fought to keep a hold of his consciousness. His sister appeared into the range of his blurry vision. Oni-sama, are you okay? She asked with worry evident in both her eyes and her voice. Ravel, rasped Riza. Give me your bottle of phoenix tears, now, he instructed her. Obeying her older brother's command, the blonde girl retrieved her blue vial of phoenix tears and handed it to him. Pulling the stopper out with his teeth, he unceremoniously spat it out before downing the contents of the bottle. Instantaneously, his damaged body was invigorated and had its full strength restored. He was back on his feet in a second, much to the shock of Ria's and her friends. He threw his arms back, generating a wave of flames behind each. I have to admit, for a mere low-class reincarnated devil, you are exceptionally strong, he addressed Ria's pawn. The brown-haired boy looked at him in disbelief and dread. You truly were a worthy opponent, Riser complimented him. I approve of you being in Ria's peerage, however I still refuse to let you get in the way of this marriage. He then hurled the twin waves of fire at the spent teen whilst his friends watched on in horror. Getsuga Tensho! The crescent wave of energy flew in front of Issei and into the oncoming blaze, cancelling itself out along with the fire. Great going, Issei, Ichigo congratulated as he flew down next to his comrade. Just take it easy from now. I'll handle things from here. Yeah, Issei breathed in relief. He gave the orange-haired teen a large smile. That sounds like a great idea right now. Akino also landed down next to him. Yufufufu, you were amazing back there, Issei-kun, she praised. I saw all of it. Thanks, he replied. The teenage substitute Soul Reaper grabbed Issei's arm and hoisted his fellow teen up to his feet. Anyway, it seems like someone's very eager to see you. Before Issei could question his friend's words, he was unexpectedly shoved away to the side. However, rather than meeting the ground, he felt a pair of arms wrap around him in a loving embrace. Lifting his eyes, he saw that it was Ria's who'd caught him. Her turquoise eyes were wet with tears of joy. Issei, thank you, she whispered into his ears as she pulled him closer to herself. Thank you for fighting so strong just for me, Issei. My cute Issei. While MSTR and Servant were sharing a heartwarming moment, Ichigo was advancing towards Riser, who was now wearing an expression of annoyance. So you've come to face me in the pawn's place, he growled. No, he's already fought his battle. This one's mine, Ichigo stated in denial. I'll burn you to ashes, you lowly human. Riser bellowed, fire rising from his palms. You know, there's a saying, fight fire with fire, said Ichigo calmly, his expression neutral. Also, I've been wondering about something. Then, to everyone's astonishment, red flames burst up and began swirling around his form. Which is stronger? The flames of a devil phoenix? Or Wasuzaku? Oh make! Ichigo was sat in his chair, leaning back against the backrest with his eyes closed. Lunch break had just begun a minute or so ago. Normally, he'd be making his way out of the classroom to go enjoy his homemade lunch in the shade of the tree that he usually sat under. Today though, he decided to just rest for a short while in his seat before going out. Half the class was still inside too, which consisted entirely of girls. He hadn't slept properly the previous night, due to getting an urgent request for assistance from the Gremory peerage in the middle of the night. Something about a rabid yokai that had been rampaging across Kuo. He'd simply gone to where the group was, eliminated the monster without even bothering to examine or identify it properly, courtesy of a Getsuga Tensho, then gone back to bed. Just outside the classroom window, a shady figure was clinging to the wall. Whoever it was, they were completely obscured from head to toe by a black hooded cloak. All that could be seen was a hand covered in white armor with clawed fingertips, which was what the person was using to stay on the vertical surface of the wall. Looks like everything's in position, they observed. The voice was fairly deep, suggesting that it was a male. Using their free hand, the mystery person brought a small, round object made of metal out from their cloak. Let's see if we can cause a little mischief, eh? They then nonchalantly tossed the object in through the open window. The young Soul Reaper opened his eyes when he heard a metallic clinking sound, followed by a few more of the same noise afterwards, as though something had been dropped. Searching with his oculus in the direction that the sound had originated from, he caught a glimpse of some kind of metal ball. Without warning, the sphere burst open as pink-colored smoke rapidly rushed out. Before anyone could register what just happened, the smoke had blanketed the complete room, causing a few individuals to choke once or twice. Then, just as quickly as it had come, the peculiar huge smoke thinned away into nothingness. Ichigo quickly looked at everyone. They all had their heads slightly bowed, causing their hair to cover their eyes. Hey, is everyone all right? He asked the girls, feeling a bit nervous when they didn't respond. The next thing he knew, he was suddenly grabbed by over a dozen arms and tackled to the ground whilst his female classmates gave a loud cry of Ichigo, Ichigo-kun. When his brain came up to speed, he was sitting on the floor, with who knew how many girls hugging his limbs and torso, from in front and behind. Hey, what's going on? He asked with a slightly frightened tone. Ichigo-kun, you're so mean, exclaimed one of them with a pout, whilst she was sitting on his lap and holding his shoulders. She had oak-brown hair that reached her mid-back and grey eyes, with a few streaks of light blue in them. Who? What? Was all the dumbfounded teen could reply with. It's as though you never notice us, the girl explained as she very slightly shook his shoulders. To add to his discomfort, he could feel the uncountable girls hugging him, snuggling him even more and trying to hold his body even closer to themselves. Every day, we're just wishing that you'll look us, maybe smile, compliment our looks, or even ask us out, the girl continued. It makes us burn so much on the inside that we can't even take it anymore. Well, I'm sorry. I've never known anything about any of this. Ichigo protested as his feeling of tension steadily rose. And besides, are you sure you're all feeling okay? Ah. He's worried about us, squealed one of them who was cuddling his right arm. I can't keep it in anymore, moaned the one sitting on his lap, bringing her face closer to his. I want to steal those lips of yours. Hey, hold on a second, the orange-haired teen freaked out. Things were becoming seriously creepy for him right now. Seeing that his female classmate had no intent of stopping, he turned his face away at the last second, resulting in her kissing him on the neck. That was the moment when the situation dived from bad to absolute hell. Seeing their fellow female making such a daring attempt seemed to have sparked something in the rest of the girls. All of them practically pounced on the poor boy, aiming for his mouth. Ichigo screamed as he desperately swerved and jerked his head, avoiding all of them. However, he didn't escape entirely, since his forehead, cheeks and neck became covered in marks of the girl's efforts. Deciding that he needed to escape quickly, Ichigo thrashed his limbs while consecutively releasing a brief burst of spiritual power. His daring plan had the intended effect of knocking them off of his body. Seizing the opportunity presented to him, the teen made a beeline for the window before literally leaping out of it. The moment his feet met the floor, he took off like a bullet, running behind the school and into the forest. What, he panted, the hell was that all about? Sitting on the roof of the school, having watched the entire performance on some kind of floating screen, was the cloaked figure. They rolled around laughing uncontrollably at Ichigo's misfortune, which had been deliberately caused by them. Ha ha ha. I knew it'd be great if I used the modified PHRDS gas, they commented. Ha ha. Ichigo Kurosaki, you're definitely a keeper in my book. I just know that I'll get so much entertainment out of you. Chapter 14. Fall of a Phoenix. So you've come to face me in the pawn's place? Riser growled. No, he's already fought his battle. This one's mine, Ichigo stated in denial. I'll burn you to ashes, you lowly human. Riser bellowed, fire rising from his palms. You know, there's a saying, fight fire with fire, said Ichigo calmly, his expression neutral. Also, I've been wondering about something. Then, to everyone's astonishment, red flames burst up and began swirling around his form. Which is stronger? The flames of a devil phoenix? Or of a Suzaku? Ichigo then blasted the inferno towards Riser. The devil recovered from his flabbergasted state and responded in kind. The two opposing waves of fire collided and cancelled each other out. Without letting any time go to waste, the young substitute Soul Reaper dashed forward. To all the onlookers, he appeared directly in front of Riser in the blink of an eye. Taking advantage of his foe's lack of preparation for such a speed, Ichigo rammed his right fist into Riser's chest. Just when the blonde devil had gone off his feet and was about to soar away from the force of the impact, the orange-haired teen grabbed his foot with his left hand. Whipping around 180 degrees, he relinquished his hold, roughly throwing Riser into the wall of the new school building. He crashed into it with such speed that a spider web of cracks was generated. Pulling himself free of the wall's forced embrace, Riser caught sight of Ichigo speeding towards him, a torso-sized fireball in each hand. Riser instinctively covered himself in flames for protection. It was almost for naught though, as he felt the flames of the teenage substitute blaze through his own easily. Roaring from the excruciating agony of feeling his flesh being seared, along with the painful feeling usually associated with holy power, the blonde phoenix was blasted away. Moments after skidding across the ground, Riser began lifting himself back up whilst muttering furiously. Quickly looking ahead, he saw Ichigo preparing to rush at him once again. Not willing to be subjected to more punishment, he countered by launching a swirling fireball the size of a man at the teen. Seeing the incoming hazard, Ichigo promptly dived to his right in order to evade it. Springing to his feet, the Soul Reaper noticed his opponent barreling towards him with a burning rage clear in his eyes. Patiently, he waited for Riser to draw closer, confusing all the spectators while simultaneously making them watch closely in anticipation. Carefully perceiving his adversary's approach, Ichigo waited until he was just a few seconds away. Then, he unleashed a raging torrent of his red Suzaku flames directly into Riser's chest. As the devil staggered back in suffering, the substitute charged forward with his right fist cocked back in preparation. When he was within striking distance, Ichigo released a bone-shattering punch to Riser's face. Next, his left fist flew into a left hook that connected with the side of his enemy's face. Letting Riser stumble a few steps, he followed it up by crashing his right foot into the blonde's gut. Riser coughed out BLD. He was being overwhelmed by the power of the boy before him. His family's healing was helping, however the orange-haired demon before him was relentless in its strikes. He was continuously raining down blow after blow on his body. Just when his mind registered one strike, the next would immediately follow. Deciding that enough was enough, and that if he wasn't given any sort of relief, then he'd simply make his own, the son of the Phoenix household made his body explode with flames. It had the desired result of making Ichigo halt his assault and back away a little. "Don't you dare try to mock me, you insolent piece of trash!" Riser roared. He didn't care about anything else anymore. He would crush the fool before him who had dared to humiliate him. "How dare you try to put me to shame with your absurd notion of defeating me with fire?" He would remove this obstacle in front of him with his own strength. He would prove that he was superior. Then, he'd claim Rias as his rightful reward and enjoy her as he saw fit. He'd conquer the oh-so-great Gremory heiress, mind and body. He'd practically make the girl obsessed with only him. "I'll reduce you to nothing but a smoldering corpse," he thundered to Ichigo. Then, "I'll make Rias into my bride." He was practically fuming right now, in addition to salivating like a rabid animal. Ichigo observed Riser. Although his body language looked calm, his eyes held a cold anger. "Look at you, Riser," he spat. "You're nothing but stuck-up wreck who only cares about getting what he wants." His facial expression then morphed into one of blatant wrath. "And I've had it with you and your stupid bullcrap." Riser leaped towards his target, snarling like a feral beast. Ichigo growled, igniting each hand in a crimson inferno before subsequently storming forth himself. Utilizing his vastly superior speed, the orange-haired teen landed the first hit. Then, the two combatants engaged in a furious slugfest. It was mainly Ichigo who was landing his crushing blows on Riser, throwing in the odd punishing kick here and there. However, fueled by his mindless anger, Riser was still standing as well as getting in a few of his own strikes. Ichigo drove his fist deep into the blonde's stomach, resulting in Riser doubling over and coughing out BLD. Using his other hand, he delivered a brutal uppercut to his opponent's face, causing his upper body to raise up. Then, he performed a spinning roundhouse kick to the side of Riser's head, sending him hurtling to Ichigo's left. After laying on the ground for a few moments, Riser began struggling to his feet. His slowly repairing face was a bloody mess. The majority of his body was enshrouded in his regenerative flames. His breathing was rapid and ragged. Feeling a sudden heat emanating from in front of him, he looked up. What he saw made his eyes go wide in disbelief. Ichigo was standing in the same place. Blazing off both of hands was a colossal quantity of red fire. Except, what caught Riser's attention and caused his mouth to hang open in awe and his body to tremble with a sense of dread was the fact that the fire had gathered just behind Ichigo, in the fluctuating form of a majestic bird. "Hey there, King," spoke his inner hollow. What do you want? He asked mentally. I just had a little idea, his white doppelganger elaborated. Something that'll make sure this incompetent moron remembers us. He relayed his suggestion to his host. Ichigo smirked at what he was told. Sounds like a good plan to me, he agreed. Drawing on his hollow powers ever so slightly, he transformed his eyes into their hollowified state. Bright, piercing yellow irises against pitch-black sclera. Riser noticed the change and paled with fear. This is the end, Riser, the black-clad teen thundered in a tone that spoke of definite finality. He threw his arms forward, in the direction of the wretched being who saw others as items and playthings for his own amusement. The bird-shaped red flames raced towards the petrified Riser with its great wings stretched out. As the grand attack neared him, the devil knew that he was beaten. He couldn't overcome such a magnificent attack, especially when he was already so drained. As the ethereal avian crashed into him, his world exploded into a sea of hurt. Somewhere, in the subconscious vestiges of his mind, Riser had one thought. They're both monsters. Him and that pawn. His body then vanished in a dispersion of blue flecks. Riser Phoenix retires, announced Grayfear whilst the fires of Ichigo's sacred gear began to clear away into nothingness. Ria's Gremory wins. The Gremory peerage, with the addition of Ravel, looked on in awe. The younger sibling of Riser soon vanished in a similar manner to how all the other members of her brother's peerage had, since her king had been defeated. Ichigo turned around to face his comrades, his eyes having reverted back to their natural state, not that they had seen it change anyway. He gave a small sigh. Looking at the devils, he saw the shell-shocked expressions plastered across all of their faces. His mouth formed a small smirk. You know, if you keep your mouths wide open like that, a fly's going to enter it, he told them good-naturedly. His little quip snapped them all back to reality. Suddenly realizing that they'd won, they all gave a loud cheer in joy. Except for Koneko. She simply had a clearly noticeable smile on, but since it was her, that in itself was kind of a lot. ORC Clubroom, Real Kuo Academy. The magic circle shone brightly. It soon died down, revealing the victorious party, all in a happy mood. Ichigo, that was just amazing, exclaimed Issei. Nah, it wasn't all that, the substitute Soul Reaper cheerfully denied. Besides, the one who made the greatest effort was you. You're the one who's progressed the most too. Gee, thanks, the brown-haired pawn said appreciatively, rubbing the back of his head with a slight blush on his face from the praise. Ichigo, thank you so much, said Rias with a large, sincere smile. No problem, assured Ichigo. Like I told you, I don't agree with forced marriages and I hack guys like Riser. Besides, I personally think that you should be thanking Issei. After all his striving, he more than deserves it. If Riser hadn't sneakily used his sister's phoenix tears, it would have ended there. So, the real victor is him. Before any more exchanges could be made, another magic circle appeared in the room. One bearing the crest of the Gremory family. All of them immediately turned their focus onto it. A figure soon materialized. It was a young-looking man, with crimson hair and turquoise eyes. Just like Ria's. He was accompanied by the maid who they had become familiar with as Grayfear. Hello everyone, the man greeted cheerfully. Congratulations on your victory, I'm really happy about it. Oni-sama? Ria stuttered in shock. That caught Ichigo and Issei's attention. So that's Ria's big brother, huh? Gotta say, he's definitely strong, thought Ichigo. What? Asked Ria's brother playfully to his little sibling. Is it so surprising for your big brother to come and congratulate you on your success? But, you're needed as. Ria stammered in desperation, only failing miserably to get a coherent message across. Grayfear stepped forward. Miss Rias, do not worry. Your brother has some time off from his duties as a Mao tonight, due to your rating game, which you have fortunately won. Oh, I see, Rias mumbled. Mao. Ichigo thought, keeping his surprise hidden. So he's one of the 4 leaders for his faction. Talk about unexpected. Issei, on the other hand, wasn't so subtle in masking his astonishment, letting out a small "the." The young man then turned to face Ichigo. "Ichigo Kurosaki, it's a pleasure to meet you," he stated warmly, offering his right hand for a shake. "Likewise," replied Ichigo as he shook his hand. "My name is Slycer," Ria's brother told him. "I'm very grateful for the help you've given my sister tonight." "It was no problem," Ichigo assured. "Honestly." Slycer stepped back from the teenage Soul Reaper. "Anyway," he said joyfully, facing back to the others. "In honor of your victory, I would like to invite you all for a party." "A party?" Issei exclaimed excitedly. "I'm in." "Ha ha ha. Your new pawn has a lot of passion, Rias, I like that," Slycer remarked, causing his sister to go red from embarrassment. "Come on, follow me." The older Gremory activated the room's central magic circle and stepped into it. Everyone else soon followed suit. Underworld, Slycer's celebration hall. The sound of people chatting and laughing was moving through the air. Sona and her peerage had joined them to celebrate their victory over Riza. There were also some other people, mainly those belonging to, or closely tied to the Gremory household, as well as good friends and their families. Ichigo walked towards a table with some refreshments on it. He'd recently been receiving a lot of thanks from various people for helping Rias in her first rating game. Like before, he told them that it was no problem, as well as that Issei was really the one they should thank. To his surprise, even Lord Phoenix, Riza's father, had thanked him. "My son had become too confident in our clan's regenerative power," he told the orange-haired teen. "He was too cocky for his own good. Now, he has learnt a valuable lesson. That even those of our household can be defeated." "You're welcome," Ichigo had replied to him. "However, I believe that the truly worthy one to be praised here is the Red Dragon Emperor, Issei Hyudo. He actually defeated your son first after all." Lord Phoenix chuckled. "How modest. It is an admirable quality." He then proceeded to turn around and leave. Back to the present, Ichigo felt pretty relaxed. Although, there was something that confused him. Not anyone from Ria's or Sona's peerage, but a few females had been giving him strange looks. Some of them even winked at him, or giggled when he made eye contact with them. He also heard something about inviting him from a few girls in some groups. He wasn't really sure why though. Those weren't the only weird things that happened though. A few minutes ago, when he was just relaxing against a wall, a girl who looked his age or maybe a year younger came next to him out of the blue. She asked him the typical questions, what his name was, his age, etc. She inquired if he was a member of Ria's peerage. When he told her that he wasn't actually a devil, she seemed to be a little conflicted and was muttering something under her breath, as though she was debating with herself. The only things he could make out were something to do with the permission, what would they say, and does it really matter? She soon got over it and asked him if he planned on coming to the underworld again. He replied that he honestly didn't know if he'd visit a second time. She seemed a little disappointed with his answer. Nevertheless, she politely said that it was nice meeting him before walking away with a faint blush across her face, which Ichigo failed to notice. The event left him confused to say the least. As he finally arrived at the refreshments table, he noticed Koneko a few paces away from him to his right. The petite girl was gathering a various assortment of sweets and desserts on her tray. "You've got quite the sweet tooth," Ichigo commented after he'd walked up to her without her noticing. Koneko gave a slight jump, being startled by his seemingly sudden appearance. "Hello, Ichigo-senpai," she greeted him. She then looked at what she'd gathered so far. After a second or two, she picked up a regular-sized, wrapped chocolate bar and set her tray down on the table. "Here, it's a good one," she said, offering the chocolate to him. "Thanks," he replied with a small smile as he took the treat from her hand. He subconsciously recognized the chocolate, having seen it multiple times in the convenience stores, but never having actually bought it. Unwrapping the chocolate, Ichigo took a bite. You were right. It is a good one," he told Koneko. He calmly continued eating it. He'd probably buy one the next time he went shopping. That's good to hear, the white-haired rook remarked with a ghost of a smile. She then mumbled something that he couldn't really pick up. I'm sorry, what was that? He asked her upon finishing. Koneko fidgeted nervously before barely whispering, Nii-san. Ichigo's eyes went wide with shock. He wasn't sure if he'd actually heard her correctly. Was she trying to say that she viewed him as an older brother? Can I call you Oni-san? She asked tentatively whilst avoiding direct eye contact with him. The next thing she knew, she felt a pair of strong arms wrap around her before pulling her forward. She realized that Ichigo was holding her against himself in a brotherly hug. Yeah, sure you can, he permitted. I don't mind at all. Koneko slowly raised her own arms and embraced the older teen back. Thank you. Ichigo Nii-san. The two remained like that for a short while. Ultimately, it was Ichigo who ended the hug, removing his arms from the small girl's frame, leading her to relinquish her own hold. You can get back to enjoying your sweets, Koneko. I'm going to go outside for a bit, he informed her. He gave her a warm smile. I'll be there if you need me, okay? Koneko nodded in understanding. Okay. Ichigo turned around and advanced towards one of the doors that lead to a balcony. Meanwhile, Issei was sitting at a table, quietly enjoying some of the food that was on offer. After all the fighting he'd done, he had quite an appetite. An appetite which had been fulfilled with satisfaction, since the food was delicious. It wasn't better than Ichigo's impossibly awesome cooking though. When he finished eating, he stood up and made his way to the bathroom to wash his hands and mouth. Upon re-entering the large hall, he heard the sound of footsteps approaching him. Facing the direction that the steady sound was originating from, he caught sight of his MSTR, Rias, walking up to him. Her expression showed that she was clearly happy. Issei, can I talk to you? She requested. Sure you can, Bucho, he responded. Not here, somewhere more private, Rias explained. Follow me. Without waiting for Issei's reply, she took his hand in her own and started leading him away. She was moving towards a door that led to one of the balconies, not the same one that Ichigo went to, just so you know. Opening the doors, she stepped out into the cool night air. Releasing a content sigh, she released Issei's hand from her grasp before closing the door. Bucho, just what is it that you wanted to tell me? Issei questioned. Issei, I want to thank you for what you did, Rias told him, slowly drawing closer to her pawn. For fighting so strong just to give me my freedom. It was nothing, Issei smiled. Honestly. It was the least I could do for you, after all that you've done for me. The crimson-haired teen donned a somewhat sad expression. She gently touched his dragonized left arm. Still, you didn't have to go so far. This is never going to turn back your normal arm, you know? I don't care, Issei refuted firmly. I fully understood the consequences involved in what I did. I don't regret it at all. Rias was dumbfounded by his bold declaration. But this might not be the last time my family tries to get me engaged. There could be others later on. Then the next time I'll give my other arm, the brown-haired teen vowed. Then my leg. After that, it'll be my other leg. If another one still comes after that, then I'll sacrifice my eye. Issei, Rias said in surprise. But why? Why would you go so far just for my sake? Isn't it obvious? He asked her. I owe you everything. Besides, I'm your pawn, aren't I? That was it for Rias. The final nail in the coffin. On impulse, she cupped the sides of his face before pulling him in and giving him a deep, passionate embrace. The Red Dragon Emperor's eyes literally bulged out of their sockets at the NTMT contact. Eventually pulling away, Ria smiled at her beloved peerage member. That was my first embrace, she informed the awestruck boy. Oh, right, wait. Your first one. Issei exclaimed in amazement. That's right, his MSTR confirmed. It's something that girls treasure, isn't it? Well, yeah. But are you sure that you should have given me something as big as that? Yes, you deserved a reward like that after everything you did, she verified. Well, I'm very grateful, he told her. I feel honored to have received something so special. Oh, there's one more thing too. Ooh? What's that? I decided to live with you from now on, she enlightened, thereby dropping a figurative bomb on Issei. I want to get closer to my beloved servants. After all, that's what a good king should do, isn't it? Giggling, she turned on her heels before walking away and re-entering the hall, leaving a speechless Issei behind. All he did was carry on staring off into space. The events that had just occurred constantly replaying in his head. Are you okay, partner? Drake asked him after a while. Why yeah, Issei replied, snapping out of his trance-like state. He slowly raised his right hand towards his mouth. Gently, he touched his fingers to his lips. Slowly but surely, a smile etched itself onto his face. In fact, I'm feeling pretty great. On another balcony, leaning against the stone railing, Ichigo was looking up at the sky. He had a calm feeling of satisfaction. Overall, things were going pretty well in his new life. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad after all. The opening of the door caught his attention. Directing his gaze in its direction, he saw Koneko coming out from the party to join him. Hey Koneko, you need something? Ichigo inquired. No, not really, the small girl answered. Just want some fresh air and company? Yes, kind of. He motioned her over to come his side. When she arrived, he ruffled her hair affectionately, making her react by smiling and purring slightly. You can stay here as long as you want, little sis, he assured her as he lowered his hand. Koneko silently nodded and embraced his arm. Thank you. She closed her eyes and allowed her body to relax, dropping her usually ever-present guard. While she still felt sad over the loss of her sister, she was happy at the gain of her new brother. Oh make! Ichigo and Raiza stood facing each other, preparing to battle. You know, there's a saying, fight fire with fire, said Ichigo calmly, his expression neutral. Also, I've been wondering about something. Then, to everyone's astonishment, red flames burst up and began swirling around his form. Which is stronger? The flames of a devil phoenix? Or of a Suzaku? Instantly, Raiza's entire demeanor changed. Gone was the cocky, arrogant expression plastered over his face, replaced by a look of shock. Wait, he suddenly demanded. What did you say your name was? Ichigo? Kurosaki, Ichigo responded, somewhat confused. To everyone's disbelief, Raiza dropped to his knees. Please forgive me, he begged. I didn't know that it was you. I'm so sorry, I should have recognized sooner. Wait, what? Asked Ichigo, having lost his grasp of the situation at hand. Ichigo? What's this all about? Rias inquired. Honestly, I have no idea, he replied truthfully. The crimson-haired Gremory heiress looked at Raiza. Never in a million years would she have expected to see what was taking place before her very eyes right now. Would you mind explaining what you're going on about here, Raiza? She queried the blonde devil. It's him, exclaimed Raiza as he lifted his head up. The one from the ancient texts in my family's possession. The one blessed with the power of the Suzaku. Garbed in black, with hair the color of the magnificent sunset. He who bears the name of Protector. Wielding a sword which purifies evil. All of the Gremory peerage looked at their Soul Reaper comrade in utter shock. Ichigo, is there something that you're not telling us? Rias questioned with a slight frown. No. Ichigo refuted. I don't know what the hell this guy's going on about. I've never even heard of any text like the one he's talking about. By now, Raiza was practically groveling at the orange-haired teen's feet. Please, you have to come with me. The others need to know of your arrival, he pleaded. I don't even care about this rating game anymore. Please, you must let the others in my family know. We've been waiting generations for you. Are you sure you don't know Ichigo? Akino asked him whilst eyeing Raiza with confusion. No. I don't know. Something like that shouldn't even exist about me. Ichigo vehemently denied. Whoa, 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 remarked Issei. What do you mean something like that shouldn't even exist about you? Ah. DMN it all. Ichigo screamed in frustration. Oh, make two. Ichigo was walking down the road. It was a sunny Saturday morning. He was currently moving through the shopping area of Kuo. A few meters ahead, he spotted a familiar figure. Teenage boy who looked the same age as himself, with pure white hair and a jacket that had woolen-looking sleeves. ZX? Ichigo asked when he approached the figure. The person turned to face him. If it was ZX, his hair was no longer overshadowing his eyes, allowing Ichigo to see that they were a light blue in color. Hello again, Ichigo. What are you doing here? The teenage Soul Reaper inquired. Nothing really, replied ZX. I'm just taking a break for a few days. Have you regained your memory yet? Ichigo asked. The white-haired teen gave a little sigh before gently shaking his head. Unfortunately, no, I haven't. Oh, I see. The two boys fell into silence. Suddenly, Ichigo noticed that the surroundings had become awfully quiet. He could have sworn that a mere minute ago this place was filled with people. Something's wrong, declared ZX. Yeah, I figured as much, agreed Ichigo. The ground beneath them began to rumble as cracks started appearing around them. Without warning, there was an eruption of sorts a short distance ahead of the two. Something rose up out of the ground. It looked like a massive metal egg, easily twice an average man's height. A hissing sound emanated from the strange object before it split into two halves. However, it didn't split from the top and move downwards. Rather, it went in the complete opposite way. The two halves rose up like gull-wing doors on a car would, revealing something inside. The creature was a bone-white color and had a highly skeletal appearance. It stood on two sturdy legs, looking at them with red eyes. Its two arms were hanging at its sides. Two protrusions came out from its back and connected with the tips of the shell. It looked vaguely draconic in shape. What the hell is that thing supposed to be? Ichigo wondered out loud. No idea, said ZX. It's my first time seeing something like this. DMN, of all the times to not have my sword on me. Don't worry, reassured Ichigo. He materialized Zangetsu into his hands. I've got mine. Upon seeing the orange-haired substitute draw his weapon, the creature gave a low growl. Ichigo kept his gaze steady, ready to act if he was attacked. Snow-chan, cried an unexpected voice jubilantly. I found you. Looking in the direction that the noise came from, they spotted someone running towards their location. It was a grown man with mostly black hair and gold bangs at his forehead. He was running towards them with an ecstatic expression on his face. Surprisingly, the creature's eyes went wide with something that looked akin to a mixture of worry and desperation. Wasting no time whatsoever, the creature turned tail and began running away as fast as it possibly could, away from the approaching figure. Wait! Snow-chan, called the man. Come back. Stop running. Away from Daddy. The retreating creature gave some sort of garbled squawk in response, before moving even faster, its arms flailing around wildly in a comical fashion. Snow-chan, stop, pleaded the man, who was now comically crying streams from his eyes. Come back to me. Don't leave me alone, Snow-chan. Ichigo and ZX looked at the strange pair as they carried on running further and further away from the two. What the heck was that all about? Ichigo asked with a clueless face. I don't even know, said ZX with a troubled frown. Zangetsu? Ichigo mentally inquired, hoping for some sort of an explanation. Heck, he didn't even mind his hollow giving him an answer to what he'd just witnessed. I'm sorry, Ichigo, his Zanpakuto spirit apologized. But some things in the world simply cannot be explained. Chapter 15. The Mysterious Girl. Ichigo's house, Ichigo's room. Ichigo slowly opened his eyes as he woke up. It was a Sunday morning. A few days had passed since their victory over Riza. He remembered being informed about the fact that Riaz was now living under the same roof as Issei. School was out for the next week, giving him 5 free days. He wondered what to do as he lay on his bed. It was an opportune time to hunt down the fragments. I guess I could start hunting for them in the afternoon or something, he mused to himself. Geez, King, why don't you just take it nice and slowly? His inner hollow asked with a blank tone. Who? His words are actually worth considering, Ichigo, Zangetsu stated. There is no harm in taking your time with your task of eliminating the fragments. After all, you have your full life to do so. Yeah, I guess you guys have a point, Ichigo agreed. I suppose I could just take life easy today. Maybe I'll just walk around for a while and see if anything interests me. Well, with your track record, something interesting is practically bound to happen, voiced his inner hollow. Ignoring his pale copy's quip, Ichigo slowly raised his upper body from the mattress of his bed. After fully rising from his bed and getting to his feet, he proceeded to carry out his usual routine to clean himself and freshen up. 45 minutes later, he was stepping out from the doorway of his house. The cool morning breeze gently blew against his face. Locking the door behind him, he set off to talk his stroll around the area. The park seems like a nice area for a walk right now, he thought. He began casually making his way towards his decided destination. Overall, the day seemed pretty nice. The sky was mostly clear. Things weren't exactly sunny, but they weren't cold either. It was more of a nice, cool atmosphere. Since it was a Saturday morning, not many people were around either, thus leaving the orange-haired teen to himself. After a short while, he was at the park. He continued walking, passing through the entrance and into the small pocket of nature within a concrete jungle. His mind wasn't really focusing on anything specific. He was just relaxing his body and mind after all the recent drama with Riser. His gaze shifted to the sky above him. It was a picture of peacefulness. Suddenly, Ichigo felt his foot catch on something, consequently sending him tumbling to the ground with a startled cry. Groaning in annoyance as he lifted his prone body off the floor, he turned around to see what had tripped him up. His eyes promptly went wide with disbelief at what he saw. Lying on the floor in front of him was something that he definitely wasn't expecting to see. It was an unconscious girl with a white sheet draped over her body. Her hair was a dark navy blue in color and her skin tone was slightly paler than his own. From her arms and legs that were sticking out from under the sheet, he saw that she had a full-sleeved, black top and white trousers that reached halfway down her shins. This kind of reminds me of when Kon found Nozomi, he muttered to himself once he snapped out of his stupor. Except Kon said that Nozomi was literally naked under the sheet when he found her. Quickly shaking his head to take his mind off that topic, he then began checking his surroundings for anyone who was nearby. Thankfully, there wasn't, so there was no chance of anyone accusing him of something ridiculous. Good grief, he complained. I can't believe that this is actually happening. He proceeded to gently pick the sleeping girl up in his arms before walking away, back the way that he'd come from. Ichigo's house, living room. Ichigo sat anxiously on a sofa opposite the one that he'd laid the unconscious girl on. He had been waiting for around 5 minutes now. He was actually feeling pretty nervous. What would he tell her when she woke up? How would she even react to waking up in a place that she didn't recognize? Would she jump to conclusions, or would he be given a chance to explain? Geez, King, you just have to be a trouble magnet, don't you? Criticized his inner hollow. Well, that's not my fault, okay, he mentally argued back. Whatever. I wonder what people would say if they knew you were alone with a hot girl right now, his hollow mused, teased. What the hell? What on earth is wrong with you? You should know better than nearly everyone else. I'm not like that. Oh, stop denying it, Kingy, mocked his pale replica. You know deep down that you notice she's pretty DMN cute. Ichigo, I suggest that you return your focus to your guest, Zangetsu interjected. She is about to wake up. No sooner had his Zanpakuto spirit informed him of that when he immediately concentrated on the prone form of the girl on his sofa. She was beginning to stir, her facial expression shifting slightly every second or so. A moment later, she slowly rose to a sitting position whilst rubbing her eyes, giving a sleepy hum all the while. Good to see that you're finally awake, Ichigo greeted. In response to the sound of his voice, the girl immediately withdrew her hand from her face as her eyes snapped fully open, revealing them to be a light blue in color. Like the clear blue sky on a sunny day, but also seemed to possess a sort of ice bluish quality. Her surprised face quickly morphed into a light glare. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Where am I?" she further added, giving her surroundings a quick scan before returning her focus to the orange-haired teen before her. Whoa, don't jump to any conclusions, please give me a chance to explain everything," Ichigo said frantically as he waved his hands before himself. "All right," consented the girl, dropping her glare, "mostly anyway. Start explaining." The substitute Soul Reaper gave a sigh of relief. He was lucky that she hadn't been one of those unreasonable types. "This may sound pretty far-fetched, but I'm being completely honest, okay," he started. The girl opposite him nodded. "I was just taking a walk in the park since it was a relatively nice morning. I wasn't really paying attention to the ground when I suddenly tripped over something. I checked to see what I'd fallen over, and I saw you, lying unconscious on the floor with that white sheet over you. I didn't think that it was a good idea to leave you literally lying around like that, so I brought you back to my house." "Really? You sure you didn't do anything else?" the girl interrogated. "I swear, I didn't even try to do anything else," the young Soul Reaper confirmed exasperatedly. The girl looked at him intensely for a few seconds. Ichigo could feel a slight cold sweat along the borders of his face. Did she believe him, or did she think he was some sort of lying creep? "All right, I believe you," she finally stated. "Your eyes and face don't seem to have any dishonesty in them." Ichigo released a sigh of relief. "Glad to hear that. Thanks by the way," said the girl appreciatively, "for not leaving me just lying around in the middle of nowhere." She then gained a thoughtful look, as though she was contemplating some sort of decision in her mind. "My name's Nina Q's. I'm 16. Ichigo Kurosaki. I'm 17, the orange-haired teen informed. He then decided to ask the question that had been tugging at the back of his mind. "So, could you tell me why exactly you were lying unconscious in the park?" Nina remained silent for a few seconds. Suddenly, her face changed into a panicked expression. "I don't know." Ichigo looked at her in confusion. "What do you mean you don't know?" "I can't remember," said Nina worriedly. "I can't remember why I was there or what I was doing. I can't remember anything besides my name." "Wait, you mean you've got amnesia?" Ichigo asked in concern. His guest nodded slowly. "It looks like it." "Is there anything that you know?" inquired Ichigo. "Anything at all besides your name? Any little bits of information?" Nina pondered over what he'd just asked her. She tried searching through her empty brain for a few moments. She soon found something, but was unsure on whether or not to divulge such information. "Wait, if I just ask him a few questions, then I'll know if it's all right to tell him," she thought. Can I ask you something?" she requested her anxious host. "Hey, yeah, sure you can," the teenage substitute consented. "Do you believe in the supernatural?" "What exactly do you mean by supernatural?" "Well, things like magic, yokai, angels, devils, etc." Ichigo examined Nina's expression carefully. The girl was being completely serious. "Yeah, I know they exist." "Do you mean that from experience, or just as a personal belief?" "Experience." "So he does know about it all," thought Nina. "I guess that makes it okay to tell him. I know about the supernatural. I'm not sure if I have any personal ties to anyone who's a magician or anything, but I have a strong feeling that I'm involved with the supernatural side of the world." "I see," remarked Ichigo. An idea unexpectedly came to his mind. Since she knows about the supernatural, maybe Rias and her group can help her. Suddenly, on Ichigo's left, a black magic circle materialized on the floor. After a second or two, a person appeared. A male who looked to be around 16, with green eyes, and was decked out in full black apparel. His long coat's hood was down though, revealing his slightly messy mop of obsidian hair. At his feet was a small creature with round yellow eyes and 2 antennas. Hey Ichigo, greeted Kuro. I just thought that I'd. He trailed off upon noticing that the person he'd addressed wasn't alone. Drop by? Hey, Ichigo greeted back. You might want to be more careful the next time you decide to appear like that. You might end up giving someone a real shock if they're not aware of magic being a real thing. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind for the future, agreed Kuro sheepishly. Who is this? Asked Nina, indicating to the new arrival. He's a friend, answered Ichigo. What's the thing hugging his foot? It's kind of like his pet. Kuro and Nina turned to look at each other respectively. They both planned to introduce themselves, until a strange feeling very briefly overcame the two of them simultaneously. It was too short an experience to identify what the feeling had been, leaving them puzzled. On the other hand, to Ichigo's eyes, all he saw was the pair staring at each other. Hello? Are the two of you done admiring each other? He questioned loudly enough to snap both of them out of their daze. They quickly averted their gazes away with an embarrassed blush tinting their faces. Anyway, sorry about that, began Kuro, still not looking directly at Nina save for the nervous glimpses. My name's Kuro. It's all right, replied Nina, who was looking at Kuro in the same manner that he was looking at her. I'm Nina. What's the matter with these two? Ichigo mentally queried. I said the admiring thing as a joke. Why the hell are they acting so weird? Who knows, King, maybe they fancy each other, his inner hollow chirped. You can't be serious. Well, it is a possibility. Shutting out his inner hollow, the orange-haired youth cleared his throat, catching the attention of his companions. Nina, I was going to tell you that I might be able to help you with your amnesia. Really? Asked Nina with wide eyes. How? Wait, you mean she doesn't remember anything? Inquired Kuro. Besides her name and the fact that the supernatural is real, no, replied Ichigo. He then focused again on the dark navy-haired girl. There's a peerage of devils that go to the same school as me. Since you're aware of the supernatural, I thought they might be able to help. Thank you, said Nina gratefully. I really appreciate everything you're doing for me. It's not a problem, assured the substitute Soul Reaper as he rose to his feet. Ichigo took his phone out of his pocket. Searching through his contacts, he began calling Ria's number upon finding it. After about 10 seconds or so, the ringing tone ceased, indicating that someone had answered the call. Ria's voice then came through into his ear. Hello Ichigo. Is there something that you need? Hi Rias, he replied back. Listen, there's someone I found who I think you might be able to help. Do you mind if I bring them over to you? He heard the crimson-haired heiress hum as she thought about it. Sure. Just meet me in the OCR clubroom. I'll bring the others. Thanks. You're welcome. I owe you for all the help you've given us anyway, Rias told him before ending the call. Come on, let's get going, Ichigo instructed, stepping towards the door. All right little guy, you know what to do, Kuro said to the little fragment that accompanied him, which promptly sank into his shadow. Nina silently got up from the sofa before following the two ahead of her. OCR clubroom. The Gremory peerage were assembled in their usual base of operations, awaiting Ichigo's arrival. Soon, they heard the sound of the door opening, followed by Ichigo entering, then Kuro, then a girl that none of them recognized. Hey guys, Ichigo greeted. He gestured towards Nina, who was standing on his right. This is Nina Q's, the girl who I'd like you to help out. I'm really thankful that you're willing to help me, said Nina. I'm sorry for any inconvenience I've caused. Rias gave the girl her signature kind smile. Don't worry, we don't consider it a problem. If Ichigo's trying to help you, then we consider you a friend and we'll do what we can. Ara, giggled Akino. Bucho loves saying lines like that. I'm the queen of this peerage, Akino Himajima. Yuto Kiba. I'm a knight, introduced Kiba. I'll try my best to help you. Koneko Tujo. Rook, said Koneko whilst eating a chocolate bar. If Ichigo Nii-san is helping you then I'll do what I can. I'm Aisha Argento. I'm a bishop, Aisha told her. I'm more than happy to help you, Nina-san. As for Issei, since the moment that Nina had entered the room, his eyes had automatically swept over her entire well-developed body before becoming riveted on one certain part of her figure. More specifically, her chest. A pie, he mentally exclaimed excitedly. They're huge. Not as big as Akino's or Bucho's, but they're still on that level. Unknown to the resident pervert, a goofy grin had spread across his face and a little drool was at the corner of his mouth. There was some BLD that had trickled out of his nose too. Oh man, I'm so happy right now. Nina had reflexively moved behind Ichigo upon noticing the way the brown-haired pawn was looking at her. The way he's staring at me is creeping me out, she stated in an annoyed tone whilst peering over the orange-haired teen's shoulder to direct a glare at the offender. The air seemed to grow colder by a few degrees. Issei, Ichigo warned threateningly. What have I told you about being a pervert? Issei immediately snapped out of his entranced state. As soon as he did, he noticed another murderous intent being directed at him. So, you're from amongst the scum of the earth, huh? Asked Kuro darkly, a sinister glint in his eyes. I hate perverts, you know. I personally believe that they all need to receive a good punishment. You're disgusting, remarked Nina with an icy glare. The surrounding air seemed to turn even colder for Issei. By now, Issei was a fearfully whimpering mess. The three were shooting visual daggers at him murderously. He could practically see the Grim Reaper before himself, its spectral from hovering above Ichigo. I'm sorry for his behavior, interrupted Rias whilst holding her palm against her forehead. But I'd appreciate it if you could just let him off the hook for now. Bucho, I'm so grateful, the Red Dragon Emperor thought in relief. Thank you so much for saving me from a most painful death, I love you. All right, said Nina, accepting Ria's apology on her perverted pawn's behalf. Though everyone could tell she was still a little disgruntled. Anyway, Ichigo spoke out, garnering everyone's attention. I think it'd be a good idea to start off at the park where I found Nina unconscious. We could check if there's any kind of clue in regards to why she was there. Yes, that sounds like a good idea, approved Rias. Let's make our way there right now. The park. The Gremory Peerage plus Ichigo, Kuro and Nina had arrived at the park. There wasn't anyone else around, so they could all search around more easily. The group walked forward a little when Ichigo abruptly stuck his arm out to the side and stopped everyone. The orange-haired teen's battle-honed instincts were telling him that something wasn't right, despite what he might be seeing. Something's wrong here, the substitute Soul Reaper informed the others. Are you sure, Ichigo? Questioned Akino with a slight frown. I can't sense anything at all. My instincts are telling me, Ichigo calmly replied. And if there's one thing I've learned from all my experiences, it's to always trust my own instincts. Ichigo slowly took a few steps. With his trademark scowl in place, he steadily lifted his right hand then cautiously put it forward. They all looked on in surprise as the air seemed to ripple and shimmer as though it was water before Ichigo's hand seemed to pass through something and promptly vanished from their sight. What? Hey, Ichigo, is your hand okay? Issei called out in slight concern. Yeah, don't worry Issei, my hand's still attached to my body, the teenage Soul Reaper answered. It's just passed through some sort of barrier. He then tried to withdraw his hand, but it wasn't coming back through. Which doesn't seem to be letting my hand pass back out. It's as though it's one way only or something. Have you come across anything like this before? Rias asked as they all grew a bit worried for their friend. Something clicked in Ichigo's mind just as he was about to reply. He turned his head to look at the group with a serious expression. Be careful, guys. The last time I came across something like this was when I was fighting a fragment. It kept itself hidden within a one-way barrier that didn't let me sense it until I was inside. They all tensed up at hearing his words. So, does that mean there's a monster in there? Aisha inquired frightfully. Most likely, answered Ichigo. If it's hostile, I'm helping you, declared Kuro in a tone that said he wouldn't budge from his decision. Me too, said Issei. I think the same goes for all of us here, stated Rias. All right, just make sure to be careful, Ichigo agreed. He walked through the barrier, soon followed by all the rest of the group. Upon stepping inside, they saw an unexpected sight. Standing a fair distance ahead of them was a lone male figure surrounded by a horde of black, humanoid creatures. They were around 5 foot tall, wearing a blue kimono shirt and black kimono shorts. Also, they were dual-wielding 2 katanas whilst defending against the strange obsidian creatures. However, the most prominent feature was that it was a white anthropomorphic rabbit. The creatures were predominantly black, but their necks, shoulders, elbows and knees were a maroon color. Also, they had 3 glowing red eyes that looked like ovals with pointed ends, the third being placed vertically on their foreheads. "Hey, what are all those black things? Are they fragments?" Ichigo mentally asked his 2 tenants. "Not exactly, King," responded his inner hollow. "They seem a little sketchy. Like they sort of are, but at the same time aren't. They have a similar signature to the fragments, yet they do not seem to be actual fragments in themselves," agreed Zangetsu. "Perhaps they were originated from one fragment and made through some sort of ability." The others were looking on in shock. "Are all of those fragments?" Rias asked Ichigo. "No, not exactly. They have a similar feel, but they're not," answered Ichigo. "Forget what they are," blurted Issei, causing everyone to look at him. "We've got to help that guy out." "Yeah, you're right," agreed Ichigo. "Let's get moving." The orange-haired Soul Reaper dashed forward, shifting his attire to his Soul Reaper uniform. He grabbed the hilt of his Zanpakuto and removed it from his back, causing its impromptu sheath to unravel. He viciously cut down one of the creatures that had lunged at him. It turned into black energy that instantly dispersed how steam would. More turned to face him, so he responded as the situation called. Issei had summoned his boosted gear as he charged into the fray. His first boost occurred whilst he struck one of the creatures. Kiba had created a demonic sword using his own sacred gear before setting to work on the horde. Koneko was delivering deadly blows using her rook strength and fighting skill. Rias and Akino began raining down blasts of destruction and thunder respectively. Kuro had summoned a sword to his right hand with a call of Diablo, it appearing in a brief cloud of darkness. He stood guard near Aisha and Nina, dealing with any creatures that got too close for comfort. The hilt was pitch black but had a bone-white, ribcage-like casing across its full length. There was a short chain at the end consisting of only 3 links made from grey metal. The crossguard was some sort of black metal with a rather unique shape. The central section of it curved inward slightly at the top and bottom. The sides were shaped like dull axe heads, having small notches at the back part where they joined onto the central section. Set into the middle of the central part, on both sides, was an engraved skull with horns and fangs, made of a dark grey metal. The blade itself was double-edged and pure obsidian in color. On both edges, there were 3 small, outwards-facing points where it came from the crossguard in addition to one on each edge before. The curve leading to the blade's tip. The fragment that acted like his pet suddenly grew to the same size as him, gained a slimmer, streamlined body, clawed hands with 5 digits and narrower eyes. Basically, it looks like a Neo Shadow from Kingdom Hearts. Ichigo landed back-to-back with the rabbit after having charged through a group of the creatures. "I appreciate your assistance," said the rabbit as he stabbed one of the creatures with a slight frown. His voice was even and fairly deep. "Don't worry about it," assured Ichigo, slashing another of the creatures. "What's your name, by the way?" Usagi Miyamoto, informed the white rabbit, delivering a deadly cross-slash. "Ichigo Kurosaki." He destroyed a bunch of the creatures by equipping his shock burner and launching a fireball at them. "Everyone clear out!" Ichigo shouted to the others. "I'm going to finish off all the remaining ones." Upon hearing order, they all jumped away to a safe distance, including Usagi. Ichigo leaped high into the air. He could see all of the enemy beings gathered below him. He raised his Zanpakuto high above his head and started channeling his spiritual power into the blade, causing it to glow a light blue. "Getsuga Tensho!" Ichigo cried out, releasing a large crescent wave of light blue energy down at the creatures. His attack ended up annihilating them all down to the last one. The orange-haired teen gently floated back to the ground. The others soon came and joined him. DMN, commented Issei. That was some crazy attack. I've got to say, that was pretty amazing, remarked Kuro. Heh, thanks guys, Ichigo said appreciatively. He turned to face Usagi. By the way Usagi, could you tell us who you are exactly? All eyes went on the white anthropomorphic rabbit. His twin blades had been sheathed at his hips left side into two black sheaths. My name is Usagi Miyamoto. I am a traveling yokai who currently operates as a freelance bodyguard, although I am taking a short break for the moment, he informed them. Usagi-san, how did you end up surrounded by those creatures? Inquired Kiba. I was moving through this area when I ended up walking through the barrier and couldn't get back out. Then, they literally dropped down from the sky and landed around me. Usagi sighed. It was troublesome to say the least. Are you familiar with what those things are? Asked Rias. Unfortunately, no, he replied. Before any further exchanges could be made, they all heard a male voice speak from above them. My, looks like quite the crowd has gathered. Looking skywards, they saw a figure in a hooded dark grey cloak standing in mid-air. His face was obscured by a light grey mask. There wasn't a gap for the mouth, only slanted slits for the eye holes. The cloak wasn't wrapped around him, letting them see his body. It was like some kind of natural plate armor with a black coloring, save for the white hands, shins and ribcage-like design on his torso. In his right hand was a sword. It had a single edge, the actual blade being light grey, whilst the cross guard was black with a white X on both sides and the hilt was a BLD red color. Floating next to him was what appeared to be a tall individual wrapped in a billowing black cloak. They had 3 eyes glowing under their hood, just like the creatures that they had fought, except they were yellow. Zangetsu, are they? Ichigo mentally asked. Yes, Ichigo. Those two are definitely fragments, his sword spirit confirmed. Who are you? Demanded Rias. Wouldn't you like to know? The masked one replied mockingly. The two of them are fragments, Ichigo announced. What do the two of you want? The one in the mask focused on him. His sword hand twitched slightly. Ichigo noticed, sending alarm bells ringing in his mind. The one with the black cloak and yellow eyes suddenly opened and spread his cloak wide. They were expecting to see his body, but there wasn't one. Instead, there was a large, gaping maw lined with fangs. Then, from within the darkness of the horrific mouth numerous bodies began falling out. Instantly they recognized the bodies as the creatures that they'd all fought earlier. The creatures immediately surrounded them upon touching down, however they weren't all the same as before. Some had navy blue in the places where the other ones had maroon. You asked what we want, the masked fragment inquired rhetorically. He dived towards Ichigo like a bullet, readying his sword. Your deaths? Ichigo flew up and intercepted him while the rest of the group engaged the foot soldiers. As they got into the battle, they noticed that the new type of enemy was much faster and more agile than the ones with maroon areas, but they were weaker in raw strength. Ichigo met the hostile fragment in mid-air. Their respective swords clashed, creating sparks. Ichigo disengaged from the lock then slashed horizontally, only for his adversary to parry the strike. They continued their aerial combat, dashing through the sky and repeatedly clashing. Ichigo brought his blade down in a powerful overhead slash. The fragment blocked the attack, but Ichigo began forcing him down rapidly. The two of them ended up landing on the ground, still locked together. You're holding back, stated the fragment, surprising Ichigo. I can sense it. Well, you don't seem to be going all out either, Ichigo countered after quickly regaining his composure. The fragment began pushing against Ichigo's Zanpakuto with more force. Release more of your power, I want a true battle. Ichigo forced back his enemy's sword. Sorry, but I'm not one to just flamboyantly throw my strength and abilities around. I'll force you to use it. You're welcome to try, Ichigo challenged with a smirk. The two pulled back from each other. The fragment leaped back a little, putting some more space between him and the orange-haired teen. Keeping his sword pointed out and ready, he looked at Kuro, who noticed his gaze and returned it after hacking an enemy down. "Why are you siding with these weaklings?" the fragment asked. "I may have been born from darkness, but I stand in the light," Kuro declared. "TCH, fool." The fragment then charged at Ichigo once again, resuming their duel. Issei blasted away another creature via a small dragon shot. "Damn it, they just keep on coming," he growled in frustration. Him and Kuro had unofficially teamed up to protect Nina and Aisha, the ones who weren't suited to combat. "Bucho, what should we do?" he shouted out to his MSTR. Ria's obliterated 5 enemies when she heard her pawn call out to her. "We need to keep fighting for now, Issei. Their numbers are getting smaller. We'll discuss what to do next when we finish off this group." "Okay," responded Issei. Kiba had an idea whilst dodging a swipe aimed at his head. "Issei, how many times have you powered up?" Issei delivered a dragon smash to a creature, bowling it into 5 others before they all vanished. "I just had my 5th boost." "Issei, let's do a combination attack. Right now, just like in the rating game." "All right." Kiba dashed towards Issei using his knight speed. Upon reaching him, he immediately dropped to his knees and slammed his palms onto the ground. "Sword BRTH," he proclaimed loudly as he liberated his sacred gear. "Boosted gear gift." Issei roared and punched the ground. "Transfer," cried Drake's voice from the crystal as green dragon energy flowed into Kiba's sacred gear under the ground. Just like in the rating game, uncountable massive demonic sword rose out of the ground, skewering and impaling all of their enemies whilst Kiba navigated and controlled it to leave their allies untouched. "Yufufufu, that was a powerful combination," complimented Akino. "Ah, it was nothing," Issei claimed happily with a small blush. "It was Kiba who thought of doing it." "That one's not sending any more out," Koneko observed, pointing at the fragment in the air which had unleashed the creatures upon them. Maybe it needs time to recover before it can create more soldiers?" Ria suggested. "I hope you're right on that," said Nina. "You guys can't keep going forever." "Ichigo Ni-san is still fighting," Koneko pointed out, drawing everyone's attention to said orange-haired teen. As for Ichigo, he clashed with the fragment in the skies once more before they both withdrew. "Hate to break it to YA, but you still haven't forced me to release more of my power," Ichigo stated. "Other than make me put more force and speed into my attacks, but that doesn't really count, does it?" The fragment remained silent for a moment. Due to the mask, Ichigo couldn't see him glance at Nina and Aisha. "I have a way other than brute force. I could have used that method, but it's not as exciting. Plus, this way will confirm something I've been pondering." The fragment raised his sword out towards Ichigo. A solid ball of black energy began to grow at the tip until it was twice as large as himself. He launched it at Ichigo, who began preparing a Gestuga to counter it. The teenage substitute's eyes widened in fear and realization as he saw the fragment begin diving towards Aisha and Nina straight after. "Damn it, he tricked me," though Ichigo as he frantically fired his technique at the oncoming orb. He started rushing down as quickly as he could. "From this distance, the only way I can reach them in time is..." Everyone looked on in shock as they saw the fragment rapidly descending towards them, although they didn't know that he was heading for their most vulnerable members. They all prepared to retaliate, thinking he was going to do something that targeted all of them. Even then, Aisha could protect herself with one of her barriers, whereas Nina had nothing. "Bankai!" Ichigo roared, causing black spiritual power with a red outline to enshroud him. It immediately cleared away, revealing Ichigo clad in his Bankai attire and wielding Tensa Zangetsu. He shot forward like a bullet, causing a boom and passing the fragment and spinning around to face him while bringing his sword around for a strike. The group watched in shock as Ichigo was briefly covered from their view by some sort of strange energy. They became slightly concerned for him, but that vanished and was replaced by surprise when they suddenly saw him mere meters above Aisha and Nina, in slightly different clothing and holding a different sword, moving his blade to intercept the incoming fragment. "Looks like I was right," said the fragment upon clashing blades with Ichigo. And I've made you draw out more of your power. Ichigo glared at the fragment with a calm rage burning in his eyes. And now you're going to regret it, he stated back. Chapter 16. New Nemesis and Housemates. Ichigo and the masked fragment continued their stare down for a few more seconds before both of them pulled away and flew back into the sky. Both combatants were sizing the other up. Then, as though a signal had been given, they charge at one another, meeting halfway as they locked blades. You're going to regret what you just tried to do, Ichigo threatened as he glared fiercely at the fragment. Perhaps, replied the fragment nonchalantly. But now that you've released more of your power, we can really get into things. Using his raw strength, the teenage substitute Soul Reaper forced his opponent away. Without letting up his advantage, he shot forward and kept pressing the fragment with attacks. The fragment parried a strike aimed at his head before quickly dashing back to get some room. Looks like I'll have to get more serious about this, he said, causing Ichigo to watch him cautiously. Then, the masked fragment became surrounded by smoky dark purple energy, covering him from view. Suddenly, the energy was absorbed into his body. The white sections and parts of his naturally armored body started turning purple. The blade of his sword shifted hues to a glowing purple. Finally, a cloud of smoky, hazy dark purple energy emanated from his back before it took the shape of two ethereal wings and slightly solidified somewhat. However, they weren't feathered in appearance, as their shape actually reminded Ichigo of Toshiro Hitsugaya's Bankai's wings. What the hell? Just how powerful are those two? Issei exclaimed in shock as he watched the aerial battle from the ground. To think that Ichigo had this level of power all along, said Rias in awe. Could this be his balance breaker? His skill with a sword is on a completely different level to mine, observed Kiba. It's as though he's a seasoned veteran. The air was thick with tension, so much so that those watching from the ground were barely breathing. The two dashed towards one another again, but this time the masked fragment had much greater speed. Their swords crossed multiple times as they both tried to strike their enemy whilst parrying the other's blows. The orange-haired teen managed to graze his enemy's stomach. The masked fragment moved his sword at the young Soul Reaper, scoring a light cut on his left cheek as he dodged it. Ichigo sent a horizontal slash towards the fragment's chest. The masked fragment ducked under the obsidian Zanpakuto and countered with a rising slash. Ichigo evaded by flash-stepping behind his adversary with his sword held high. The fragment used its wings as shields to block the strike. The teenage substitute disengaged and pulled back. "Ha ha, this is more like it," the fragment proclaimed joyfully. "This battle's making my BLD boil." Ichigo remained impassive and collected on the outside, whilst inwardly he groaned and face-palmed. Don't tell me that this guy's a battle freak like Kenpachi, he thought in exasperation. Once again, the dueling duo charged at each other, their respective swords clashing when they met. Both were struggling for DMs. As they fell back, Ichigo suddenly began moving around the fragment at a rapid pace, leaving multiple after-images of himself. However, the masked fragment was able to clearly read Ichigo's movements as he skillfully blocked the slash aimed at his throat. He began bringing one of his wings down in an attempt to strike the orange-haired Soul Reaper, but Ichigo noticed and moved back, out of the approaching appendage range. Then, he suddenly lunged forward without warning, holding his Zanpakuto out, targeting his adversary's center of mass. The fragment dodged by sidestepping to the right, although the black blade of Tensor Zangetsu still nicked his left arm. He tried to cut Ichigo's back as he passed him, except the teen escaped by flash-stepping away to a safe distance. The two entered a stare down again, trying to get a read on their opponent. The masked fragment flicked his right wrist. Almost immediately after, a cover of dark purple energy shrouded his sword's blade and extended outwards by a few inches as well as forming a second bladed edge, effectively increasing the weapon's range and making it into double-edged. As the hostile fragment sped towards him, Ichigo charged up his black Getsuga's red-outlined energy, but kept it confined within his Zanpakuto. He himself charged at the incoming enemy, causing them to enter another deadlock with their respective swords. Ichigo felt his inner hollow mentally give him a suggestion on what to do. "Getsuga, Tensho!" Ichigo roared, unleashing a rather sizable wave of black energy with a red outline, which quickly engulfed the masked fragment from everyone's sight. After a few seconds, they saw something shoot out from the side of the energy wave. Looking to see, Ichigo saw the masked fragment, looking a little worse for wear. His natural armor was covered in burn marks, scratches and a few cracks. His hooded cloak was also singed, especially the hood. Finally, the energy surrounding his sword evaporated away from the blade, leaving it as it was before. The masked fragment raised his weapon and held it out facing towards the orange-haired teen. An orb of purple energy began growing at the out-held tip. Within a second, it was the size of an average man's torso. Ichigo readied his own sword to counter the attack. What he didn't anticipate, however, was for the orb to explode, rapidly firing multiple fist-sized balls at him. He reacted as soon as he could, desperately weaving between the fast-moving projectiles. Despite his best efforts, a few still ended up striking him. He hadn't suffered anything too serious, only getting momentarily winded from the impact. Other than that, his Bankai Shikakusho was just slightly ruffled up. Again, they set into a furious, fast-paced close combat. After around a dozen strikes from both sides, they ended up locking into another deadlock of swords. Struggling against each other fiercely, they both ended up being pushed away by the other combatant's force. Slowly yet steadily, the masked fragment raised his glowing sword high above his head with his one hand. Dark purple energy gathered around the blade and hastily grew in quantity. It soon formed into a large skull that was equal in size to a fully grown man. Seeing this, Ichigo began charging up his Getsuga Tensho to counter it. The fragment swung his weapon down, making the skull race towards Ichigo with its jaws wide open in preparation to deal a deadly bite. Ichigo swung his own black blade, releasing a large Getsuga in the shape of a wave that matched the skull's size. The two opposing attacks met halfway and created a large blast of black, purple and red energy, causing everyone to reflexively shield their eyes. Once the dark light had died down, they all moved their hands from their eyes. Everyone on the ground was watching the aerial duel anxiously. The two fighters themselves were readying for a fresh assault, neither letting their guard down for a moment. The pair started circling one another through the air, like two beasts preparing for a fight to determine which was superior. At the same time, they barreled through the sky towards each other at speeds which made them mere blurs of movement to their spectators below, both readying their respective swords as they drew closer. When they met in the middle, they collided their blades, creating a rather impressive burst of sparks before carrying on ahead. The pattern continued for a few minutes, the two racing across the open air, clashing every couple of seconds or so, causing sparks to illuminate the sky every time they did. As he turned around and set off towards Ichigo again, the masked fragment started quickly and discreetly charging up a ball of energy. He suddenly flung the dark orb at the unsuspecting Soul Reaper whilst he was approaching him. Caught by surprise, the orange-haired substitute ended up taking the attack straight to the chest. The ball exploded after it made contact, sending Ichigo flying back a good few meters. Seizing the chance provided, the fragment rushed towards Ichigo to deliver another blow. Except that Ichigo had already recovered by then and retaliated quickly by firing a crescent-shaped black Getsuga Tensho which collided with his foe's torso and forced him back. The masked fragment now had a diagonal slash across his naturally armored body. "I think I've had enough for today," the masked fragment abruptly announced, making Ichigo stop in a mix of confusion and wariness. His energy wings then took on a more ethereal appearance prior to shrinking until they were no longer there. The changes to his sword and body reverted, the induced purple seeming to bleed away, returning them to their previous state, albeit with the battle damage still present on his form. "What are you doing?" asked Ichigo cautiously. He tightened his grip on Tensor Zangetsu just in case anything happened. "I'm simply retreating, for now," the fragment replied. He then turned around and speedily flew over to the cloaked fragment that had been accompanying him when the two revealed themselves. He raised his right hand, producing a shadowy black portal that was steadily rotating anti-clockwise. "We'll meet again, that's definite," he told Ichigo. "What, are you running away because you're afraid of losing to me?" Ichigo taunted. "Ha ha, nice try, but I'm not falling for it," the fragment countered. I simply wish to battle you multiple times, only ending at a time and place when we both release our full power against each other and the stronger one emerges victorious. I have no name, but you can call me Nemesis, since that's what I will be to you." After those words, Nemesis and the other fragment then entered the portal, which promptly collapsed on itself and disappeared. Suddenly, a large glass-like dome became visible over the entire group before it noiselessly shattered. "Whoa, what the heck was that just now?" Issei inquired in wonder. "That was the barrier that was surrounding us. It broke apart since it no longer had the fragments keeping it up," Ichigo answered, causing all the others to jump slightly at how he was suddenly standing on the ground next to them. Moreover, his clothing and Zanpakuto had returned to their standard Shikai appearance. "Ichigo, what was it that you did during your fight, when your sword and clothes changed? Was that your balance breaker?" Rias asked curiously. Ichigo began scratching the back of his head. "Yeah, you could say something like that." Usagi gave a light cough and stepped forward. As a result, all eyes went to the white anthropomorphic rabbit. "I would like to thank you all for assisting me," he told them. "You fufu, it was nothing, Usagi-san," assured Akino. "After all, it was just by coincidence that we came here." "Nevertheless, I am grateful for the help you gave," said the rabbit yokai. "I must now be on my way. I have some things left to care of as well as some old friends that I wish to visit." He then turned around and walked away from the group. "So, are we going to start looking for clues now about why Nina was unconscious here?" Kiba questioned, simultaneously reminding everyone of why they'd even come to the park in the first place. "Yes, we need to try and make up for lost time," Rias agreed. Everyone then proceeded to comb through the park, keeping their eyes peeled for anything that could give them a lead on Nina's situation. ORC Clubroom. Everyone was sitting down in the clubroom, drinking the tea that Akino had provided them. "Man, I can't believe that we didn't find anything at all," Issei complained. The group had searched through the park for 2.5 hours, yet they hadn't come up with a single clue. "I'm sorry," Nina apologized sadly. "This is all my fault." Upon seeing that the dark navy blue-haired girl was feeling down, Issei was about to cheer her up but got beaten to it by Kuro. "Hey, don't worry about it," he consoled her whilst gently holding her shoulder. "It's not like you knew that there wouldn't be anything to find there. Besides, who knows what would have happened to Usagi if we hadn't showed up." "Yeah, you're right. Thanks." Nina gave him a small smile. Meanwhile, Issei was internally raging. "DMN it. Why do you have to steal my opportunity to show her that I'm not some insensitive jerk?" he thought angrily. However, he let it slide, since, deep down, he knew that he was just being petty. Ichigo had a contemplative look on his face as he calmly drank his tea. It seemed that he was considering something. "Hey Rias," he called. "Yes," the redhead responded. "Do you think that you could use your connections to see if you can find anything about Nina?" "That's actually a good idea," the Gremory heiress agreed. She took out a few stacks of paper and placed them on her desk. "Aisha?" "Oh, yes," the blonde bishop asked. "Could you please come here and check through the written records?" "Of course," Aisha cheerfully replied, getting up and walking over to the stacks of paper. "Akino?" Rias called her best friend and queen. "Yes, Bucho? Could you help Aisha with going through the records and check in with your clients to see if they know anything?" "Yes, I'll start right away." The Priestess of Thunder made her way over to the younger girl and began helping her. Rias turned to face the rest of her peerage. "Everyone else, I want you to check in with your various clients to see if they know anything about Nina." Issei, Kiba, and Koneko stood up with a unanimous yes Bucho before setting to complete their given tasks. Ichigo finished what remained of his tea and stood up. "Nina, Kuro, come with me," the orange-haired teen instructed. While the two got up, he addressed Rias. "We're gonna go around Kuo for a while and see if there's anyone or anything that Nina knows. We'll be back later, is that okay?" "Yes, that's fine Ichigo," Rias consented. The teenage Soul Reaper moved to the door and opened it, letting his two companions walk through first before he followed them. With Kiba. I'm sorry Kiba-kun, but I don't know anyone who's called Nina Q's, one of Kiba's regular clients told him apologetically. That's okay, I'm sorry for coming on such short notice like this and taking your time, he said. Don't be, she assured him. You already helped me so much as it is. With Akino. A Nina Q's you say, asked Akino's contractor. He was a man in a smart suit who was sitting behind an expensive-looking desk in a high office. Yes, that's right. She has dark navy blue hair and blue eyes, Akino informed. The man started checking the computer in front of him, then sifted through the papers on his desk. I'm sorry to tell you this, but I don't know anyone who matches the description. We don't have a record of anyone like that on the company database either. That's all right. Thank you for trying, said the raven-haired girl. I'm sorry for taking up your time. If anything, I'm the one who's sorry that I couldn't help you for once when you've been helping me all this time. With Koneko. I'm afraid that I don't know anyone called Nina Q's who looks like what you just told me, Koneko-chan, Koneko's client said apologetically from his swivel chair. Okay. I appreciate you giving your time, the petite rook said in her usual monotone, however there was a hint of disappointment in her voice. With Issei. Issei nervously stood before the towering form of Miltan. SSO, do you know anything about her? The large cosplaying man shook his head. I'm very sorry, Devil-san, but I don't know the person you just described to me. It's okay, yelped Issei jumpily. I'll just be on my way now. He dashed out of the apartment as though his very life was on the line. He took a few breaths to calm down his nerves. Phew. Well, I guess I should check in with that university couple that Bucho and I helped get together. Kuo Academy, old school building. Ichigo, Kuro and Nina were wearily walking towards the entrance to the old school building. The trio had been walking around Kuo and asking for 3 hours, but their little venture had yielded nothing at all save for blanks. Kuro had suggested that they head back to Ria's and the others since it was starting to get dark. I can't believe all that was for nothing, muttered Nina. I'm sorry for making you guys waste all that time. Hey, like Kuro told you before, don't worry about it, Ichigo told her. It's not like you knew that we wouldn't be able to find anything. They entered and continued walking in the directions of the Occult Research Club's clubroom. Hey Ichigo, Kuro called out unexpectedly, halting the teenage substitute in his tracks. What's the deal with that door over there? The one with all the keep out a police tape and magic seals on it? I don't know, Ichigo replied honestly. But there's probably a good reason why it's like that, so I'd suggest you leave it alone. He opened the door and let them enter first. Everyone else was already back. Judging by the somber mood in the room, Ichigo guessed that they hadn't been successful in obtaining anything either. Still, it was best to ask, just in case. So, did you guys manage to discover anything that could help Nina's situation? He inquired. No, we didn't, Rias told him. It can't be helped, I guess. He gave a sigh. I'm sorry for taking your full day, Rias. Don't be, she politely refuted. You've helped us all out so much, it's only right that we try to help you out too when you need it. Ichigo faced Nina. I'm going to be heading home now. You can stay at my place until we manage to sort out your amnesia. I think we could all use an early break today, Rias said to her fellow devils. Everyone, feel free to go home. At her consent, everybody else got up and proceeded towards the door. Ichigo, Kuro and Nina were at the rear, behind everybody else. They all carried on walking and soon exited the building. It was after a few more steps that Ichigo felt a slight tug on his shirt from behind. Looking to the source of the pulling, he saw that it was Koneko. The white-haired girl had her usual stoic expression in place, although there was some uncertainty present in her hazel eyes. Hey Koneko, what's up? He questioned. Ichigo Nii-san, can I stay with you at your house? Ichigo gave her a warm, brotherly smile. I've got no problem with that, Koneko. Just make sure Rias is okay with it. Bucho said she's fine with it as long as you don't mind, Koneko informed him. Oh yeah, Kuro suddenly interrupted, making himself the center of attention for their little fursome. The others subconsciously noticed that he was carrying the little fragment in his arms, its big yellow oculus observing them in an unreadable manner. Since we're on the topic of staying in your house, do you mind if I crash in with you? Well, are talking about just a one-off for today, or were you on about a more permanent basis? Ichigo queried. I was on about a more permanent basis, the green-eyed fragment with black hair clarified. It's kind of awkward staying in that forest by myself, especially with half of the creatures being wary of me since they can sense my dark energy. Sure, I don't mind you staying, Ichigo allowed. Besides, it'll be nice to have some more company at home. He started walking ahead of the others. Come on, before we end up spending the night outside. The others soon tailed him. I'll cook something for us to eat when we get home. At that last statement, Koneko became very pleased indeed, if the small grin on her usually blank face was anything to go by. Ichigo's house, dining room. The quartet was sitting down at the dining table. In front of them was some rice and chicken curry, some shepherd's pie, and a slice of homemade strawberry cheesecake for each of them as dessert, all prepared courtesy of Ichigo himself. Koneko was eyeing the food with excited anticipation. Feel free to dig in, guys, Ichigo announced. At those words, Koneko proceeded to immediately eat her food at a rather quick pace. Her enthusiasm wasn't for nothing either, as the quality was the same as when he'd cooked for them during their training PRD. Nii-san's cooking is delicious, as always. Nina and Kuro looked at the petite girl in surprise as they raised their own food to their mouths. The moment the flavor reached their taste buds, they too began devouring the food at the same pace as Koneko. This is amazing! Kuro exclaimed in joy between gulps. Best food I've ever eaten. Nina complimented. Is it really that good? Ichigo asked, a little dumbfounded. All I did was just follow the instructions in the guide. He didn't get an answer. They were all too busy enjoying the bliss that the food brought them. Ichigo's room. Kuro had been told to stay in the guest room after Ichigo's own room. Nina was staying in the room before his. Koneko was in the room opposite his. Ichigo was sitting on his bed already in his pajamas. He was deep in thought about the day's events, particularly Nemesis. He had a strong feeling that he would encounter the masked fragment again soon. Ichigo could tell he hadn't used his full power in their fight earlier. Furthermore, there was the issue regarding the possibility of other fragments who had the same level of intelligence as Nemesis and Kuro. He'd have to make sure that he was prepared for any such confrontations. He was also feeling a little annoyed that he hadn't been able to really help Nina with her amnesia. Then, something from his conversation with Great Red abruptly came to the forefront of his mind. The dragon had told him to watch out for Ophis, the dragon of infinity. If he remembered correctly, Ophis was said to be currently using the appearance of a gothic Lolita. He didn't want to end up having her trying to track him down. He already had enough issues on his mind already. But what could he actually do if he was already within the disguised dragon's sights? I guess I'll just deal with it tomorrow and call it a day for now. He was brought out of his internal musing by his door opening. Looking up, he saw that it was none other than Koneko standing in the doorway. She was dressed in her own sleeping clothes. A white t-shirt with a black paw print on the front and blue pajama shorts. She looked anxious and a little nervous, with the slightest of pink coloring her cheeks. What's wrong, Koneko? He asked her gently. Nii-san? I feel lonely by myself. Can I go to sleep next to you? She asked apprehensively. It took Ichigo a moment to register what she'd just requested. He briefly remembered about when Karen and Yuzu, mostly the former, would sleep next to him whenever they were afraid or lonely. A small smile graced his features. Shuyuken Koneko, he told her kindly as he stood up and pulled back the covers before getting into his bed. Nodding appreciatively, the snow-haired girl walked over to his bed and climbed in next to him. She wrapped her arms around his torso and snuggled her face into his chest, just like a cat would. For some reason, Ichigo found that comparison highly appropriate for her. He wrapped his own arms around her smaller frame in a warm, brotherly embrace. "Sleep well, Koneko," he whispered to her. She gave a hum in response. The pair then proceeded to fall asleep in each other's embrace, with Koneko feeling happier than she had in a long time. Omake, déjà vu? Ichigo was quietly walking through the park. Suddenly, Ichigo felt his foot catch on something, consequently sending him tumbling to the ground with a startled cry. Groaning in annoyance as he lifted his prone body off the floor, he turned around to see what had tripped him up. His eyes promptly went wide with disbelief at what he saw. Lying down on the floor, covered only by a white sheet, was an unconscious girl. However, the one feature that immediately caught his focus was the unusually colored green hair on her head. "Enya, no way," Ichigo gasped in disbelief. "Enya Nozomi," he inspected the girl more closely. Somehow, it really was his friend from the Rigai incident. Suddenly, he heard an elderly voice shout out in alarm. "What are you doing with that girl?" Whipping his head round to see who had made the outburst, he saw that it was an old lady. With a sense of dread, he realized what his current situation probably seemed like to the elder person. "Wait, you've got it all wrong," he protested. "Help! There's a pervert here who's trying to do something to an innocent girl," she shouted out. "DMN it, I need to get out of here before I get charged for some sort of offense." Ichigo thought desperately, picking Nozomi up in his arms as the woman pulled out her phone and started dialing, probably for the cops. He wasted no time in running out of the park and back to his house.